When Caleb Ward opened the cabin door that night, he didn't expect to find his past bleeding out in the snow. Aurora Steele, billionaire, untouchable, the woman whose family destroyed everything he loved, collapsed at his feet during the worst blizzard in 20 years. With his 6-year-old daughter sleeping inside and temperatures plummeting to lethal levels, he faced an impossible choice. Let her freeze or save the person he'd spent years learning to hate. What happened in that cabin over the next 3 days would shatter them both and rebuild something neither saw coming. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wind screamed like something dying. Caleb Ward pressed his shoulder against the cabin door, fighting the gale that wanted to rip it from its hinges. Snow hammered horizontally through the darkness, each flake a tiny needle of ice against his exposed skin. The thermometer outside had stopped working 3 hours ago, frozen solid at -18 degrees, but he knew it was colder now, much colder. "Daddy?" He turned. Maya stood in the doorway to the bedroom, clutching the stuffed rabbit he'd sewn together from old flannel shirts. She was 6 years old, all dark curls and wide eyes that looked too much like her mother's. The resemblance still hurt sometimes, even after 4 years. "Just checking the door, sweetheart. Go back to bed." "I heard something. It's just the wind." "No." Maya shook her head, certain in the way only small children could be. "Someone's outside." Caleb felt his jaw tighten. The nearest neighbor was 12 miles down the mountain, and nobody drove these roads during storm season. Not unless they had a death wish. "There's nobody out there. It's too cold. Even the animals have enough sense to—" The knock came then, weak, desperate, barely audible over the wind's howl. Maya's eyes went wide. "See?" Caleb's hand moved instinctively to the rifle mounted above the door. In 7 years of living in this cabin, nobody had ever knocked after dark. Nobody came up here at all, which was exactly why he'd chosen this place. Isolation wasn't loneliness when you were hiding from something. The knock came again, weaker this time, almost lost in the storm. "Stay back," Caleb told Maya. He grabbed the rifle, checked the chamber out of habit, and moved to the door. His hand hesitated on the handle. Opening it meant letting in the killing cold, and with the generator already running on fumes, every degree of heat mattered. The knock didn't come a third time. Caleb cursed under his breath and yanked the door open. The wind hit him like a physical blow, driving snow into his face with enough force to blind him. He squinted into the darkness, saw nothing but white chaos, and was about to slam the door shut when his boot hit something soft. He looked down. A woman lay crumpled in the snow at his feet, one arm stretched toward the door she'd been knocking on. Her designer coat, some expensive brand he didn't recognize, was covered in ice. Her lips were blue, her eyes were closed, and her face, Caleb's breath caught in his throat. No, it couldn't be. "Daddy, who is it?" He didn't answer. Couldn't, because even with her face half frozen and her platinum hair matted with snow, he knew exactly who she was. Aurora Steele. The name alone brought back a flood of memories he'd spent years trying to drown. Corporate offices in Seattle, his brother's funeral, that courtroom where her family's lawyers had torn apart everything his family stood for, painted them as liars and opportunists, walked away clean while his life burned down around him. She groaned, a tiny sound, barely human. "Daddy?" Mas. Caleb stood frozen, staring down at the woman who represented everything he'd lost. Part of him, a dark, bitter part he wasn't proud of, wanted to close the door, let the mountain take her, call it karma. But Maya was watching. And despite everything Aurora Steele had done, despite the hatred he'd nursed for her family like a poison, he wasn't the kind of man who let people die on his doorstep. Damn it! He slung the rifle over his shoulder and crouched down, getting his arms under Aurora's body. She was lighter than he expected, all bone and expensive clothes with nothing substantial beneath. He lifted her easily and staggered back inside, kicking the door shut behind him. The sudden absence of wind felt like going deaf. Maya pressed herself against the wall, rabbit clutched to her chest. "Is she dead?" No. Get the blankets from the chest, all of them. Caleb carried Aurora to the couch, the only real furniture in the cabin's main room besides the table and chairs he'd built himself. He laid her down and started working on her coat, fingers clumsy with cold. The coat was soaked through, frozen stiff in places. Underneath, she wore what looked like business clothes: slacks, a silk blouse, heels that were completely insane for a mountain in winter, no hat, no gloves, like she'd walked out of a boardroom and straight into a blizzard without stopping to think. Maya appeared with an armful of blankets. Is she going to be okay? I don't know. Caleb stripped off Aurora's coat and kicked off her ridiculous heels. Her feet were pale, almost gray. Frostbite, probably. He grabbed the blankets from Maya and started piling them on, trying to trap what little body heat Aurora had left. Go get the first aid kit, the red box under the sink. Maya ran. She was good in a crisis, his daughter. Too good, maybe. She'd already seen more emergencies than most kids her age. The winter he'd gotten pneumonia, the time she'd fallen through thin ice on the creek, that terrifying week when her fever had spiked to 104, and he'd driven through a snowstorm to get her to the hospital 30 miles away. He'd raised her to be tough, to survive. Because up here on the mountain, those were the only skills that mattered. Aurora's breathing was shallow, barely visible beneath the blankets. Her face had lost the artificial perfection he remembered from news photos. The careful makeup was gone, the professional styling, the armor of wealth that had always surrounded her. She looked fragile, human. Nothing like the Ice Queen who'd sat in that courtroom 5 years ago while her lawyers destroyed his family's name. Caleb felt his anger stirring, familiar and bitter. He pushed it down. First she had to live. Then he could decide how he felt about it. Maya returned with the first aid kit. Caleb dug through it, found the instant heat packs he kept for emergencies. He cracked them to activate the chemical reaction and tucked them around Aurora's core. Armpits, groin, chest. Warming the extremities first could send cold blood to the heart and kill her. What happened to her? Maya whispered. She got caught in the storm. Why was she here? I don't know. But that was a lie. He knew exactly why Aurora Steele would come to this cabin, to this specific place on this specific mountain. Because 5 years ago, before everything went to hell, this had belonged to his family. The Steele Corporation had wanted it for some development project, luxury condos or a ski resort. He'd never learned the details because by then his brother was dead and the lawsuits had started. He'd bought it back last year through a shell company, paid triple what it was worth, just to have this one piece of his brother's legacy. The Steele family probably didn't even know they'd lost it. But Aurora had come here, in the middle of a blizzard, wearing business clothes and heels. That wasn't an accident. Aurora stirred under the blankets, a small movement. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. She made a sound, something between a word and a whimper. Can I help? Maya asked. Caleb looked at his daughter. She had that expression she got when she'd found an injured bird or a rabbit caught in a fence, determined, fearless, ready to fix something broken. It was one of the things he loved most about her. One of the things that scared him. Stay with her, Hasset, he said. If she wakes up, come get me. I need to check the generator. Maya nodded and settled cross-legged on the floor next to the couch, rabbit in her lap, watching Aurora with the serious intensity of a small child given an important job. Caleb grabbed his coat and headed for the back door. The generator shed was only 20 feet from the cabin, but the wind had picked up even more, if that was possible. He fought his way through drifts that were already waist-high, into the shed where the generator coughed and sputtered like an old man with pneumonia. The fuel gauge was deep in the red. Come on, Caleb muttered, checking connections that were already as tight as they could be. Just a few more hours. That's all I need. The generator answered with a sound like grinding metal. He had maybe 2 hours of fuel left. 3 if he was lucky. After that, no heat except the wood stove, and the wood pile was already running low because he'd planned to cut more next week, after the storm passed. The storm that was supposed to last 36 hours but was showing no signs of stopping. Caleb did the math in his head. Current temperature, rate of fuel consumption, how long the cabin would hold heat with just the wood stove. The numbers weren't good. They weren't good at all. He made his way back inside, brushing snow from his coat. Maya looked up as he entered, her face worried in a way that made her look older than 6. The generator's dying, isn't it? He'd never been able to lie to her. Yeah. How long? Long enough. He hoped. How's our guest? She moved a little, said something I couldn't understand. Maya tilted her head. She's really pretty. Caleb looked at Aurora. Even half frozen and unconscious, she had that quality some people were born with, the kind of beauty that opened doors and turned heads, the genetic lottery win that meant she'd never had to struggle the way normal people did. Her family's money had just been the crown on top of advantages she'd been handed from birth. Pretty doesn't matter when you're freezing to death, Caleb said. You sound angry. I'm not angry. Maya gave him the look, the one that said she knew he was lying but was too polite to call him out directly. She was 6 years old and already better at reading people than he'd ever been. Caleb sighed and sat down in the chair across from the couch. The cabin was small enough that there was nowhere to go that wasn't within earshot. 16 by 20 feet of living space, a bedroom barely big enough for Maya's twin bed, a bathroom the size of a closet. He'd built most of it himself after buying the land, working through 2 summers to make it livable. It wasn't much, but it was his. Aurora's eyes opened. The change was so sudden that Caleb almost didn't notice at first. One moment she was unconscious. The next her eyes were wide and darting around the cabin with the panic of someone who didn't know where they were or how they'd gotten there. She tried to sit up, failed, tried again. Easy, Caleb said. You're safe. Her eyes found him. Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by confusion. Caleb Ward? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. But she knew him. Of course she did. Just like he'd known her. Yeah. What? She looked around the cabin again, processing. How did I? You were on my doorstep, freezing to death. I brought you inside. Aurora closed her eyes. A complicated expression crossed her face. Relief, shame, something else he couldn't identify. You shouldn't have. Probably not. You should have left me out there. Thought about it. Her eyes opened again, locked on his. For a moment they just stared at each other, the weight of history sitting heavy between them. The courtroom. His brother. Her family's lawyers tearing apart everything the Ward family had built, claiming they'd stolen trade secrets, committed fraud, deserved everything they got. Maya's small voice broke the silence. Are you feeling better? Aurora's gaze shifted to Maya, and something softened in her expression. Yes. Thank you. I'm Maya. This is Mr. Rabbit. She held up the stuffed animal. He's very wise. Despite everything, Caleb saw a ghost of a smile cross Aurora's face. I'm sure he is. What's your name? Aurora. That's pretty, like the princess. Not much of a princess right now. Maya considered this seriously. Princesses have bad days too. In the stories, they're always getting cursed or locked in towers or put to sleep for 100 years. But they get better. Aurora looked like she didn't know how to respond to that. Caleb didn't blame her. Maya had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things that could be unsettling if you weren't used to it. How did you end up here? Caleb asked. This isn't exactly on the way to anywhere. Aurora pulled the blankets tighter around herself. I was driving. The storm got worse. My car went off the road about a mile down the mountain. I walked. In those shoes? I wasn't thinking clearly. You could have died. I know. She said it flatly, without emotion, like dying had been a reasonable risk to take. Caleb felt his anger rising again. Do you have any idea how stupid that was? Walking in a blizzard dressed like you're going to a business meeting? What were you thinking? I told you, I wasn't thinking. That much is obvious. Daddy. Maya's voice carried a note of warning. She's hurt. Don't yell. Aurora's eyes flickered between them, processing the dynamic. She's right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring trouble to your door. Too late for that. The generator coughed outside, a sound like something dying. All 3 of them looked toward the wall, even though there was nothing to see. Aurora sat up slowly, keeping the blankets wrapped around her. Your generator's failing. Very observant. How long do we have? We? Caleb felt his jaw tighten. I'm not the one who showed up uninvited. Caleb. She met his eyes directly. I know you have every reason to hate me. I know what my family did to yours. But right now we're trapped in a cabin during a blizzard with a failing generator and... She glanced at Maya. We need to work together. Be right. Don't. Caleb stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. Don't act like we're on the same side. Don't pretend you understand anything about what you and your family took from me. I understand more than you think. No, you don't. You sat in that courtroom like a statue while your lawyers destroyed everything my brother built. You didn't say a word, didn't even look at us, just sat there with your perfect hair and your designer suit and let them tear us apart. Aurora flinched. Good. He wanted her to feel it. You're right, she said quietly. I didn't stop them. I should have. But you didn't. No, I didn't. The generator coughed again. This time it didn't recover smoothly. The lights flickered. Maya grabbed Mr. Rabbit tighter. Daddy! Caleb forced himself to breathe. Getting angry wouldn't keep them warm. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm going to switch us to the wood stove. We'll be fine. Changed. He moved to the stove in the corner, started loading wood from the stack beside it. The generator chose that moment to give one final cough and die completely. The electric lights went out, leaving only the faint glow from the window where the storm raged. Caleb lit the kerosene lamp on the mantel, then got the fire going. The wood caught quickly, dry pine that he'd split last summer, and soon there was warmth spreading into the cabin. Not as much as the electric heater had provided, but enough, for now. Aurora watched him work in silence. When he finished, she spoke. Why did you come back here? To this cabin? That's none of your business. It belonged to your brother, didn't it? Daniel Ward. Hearing his brother's name in her voice made Caleb's hands clench. Don't. The Steel Corporation bought it 5 years ago, part of the settlement. I remember signing the paperwork. Aurora pulled the blankets tighter. I didn't know you'd bought it back. Like I said, none of your business. I came here looking for you. That stopped him. Caleb turned to face her fully. What? I knew you lived somewhere on this mountain. It took me 3 weeks to find out exactly where. I came here to... She paused, looking for words. I came to apologize. Apologize? Caleb laughed, but there was no humor in it. You drove up a mountain in the middle of a blizzard to apologize? Yes. That might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's probably. Aurora met his eyes. But I needed to say it. I needed you to know that I'm sorry for what happened, for what my family did, for my part in it. Your part? You mean sitting there like a statue while your lawyers called my brother a thief and a liar? Yes. While they claimed he stole your father's research when everyone knew your father stole it from him? Yes. While they buried the truth under so much money and so many lawyers that nobody even cared what was real anymore? Aurora's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Caleb wanted to yell, wanted to throw her words back in her face and watch her flinch. But Maya was watching, and the storm was still screaming outside, and getting angry wouldn't change anything that mattered. Your apology means nothing, he said instead. It doesn't bring my brother back. Doesn't undo what your family did, doesn't fix anything. I know. Then why bother? Aurora looked down at her hands, clasped together under the blankets. Because I'm tired of being the person who sits silent while terrible things happen. Because I've spent 30 years doing exactly what my family expected, saying exactly what they wanted me to say, being exactly who they needed me to be. And I'm done. Us betcha song. Good for you, doesn't change anything. Maybe not. She looked up. But I had to try. The wind hit the cabin with enough force to make the walls shudder. Snow rattled against the windows like thrown gravel. Maya moved closer to the wood stove, Mr. Rabbit clutched tight. Caleb checked his watch. Just past midnight. The storm was supposed to peak around 3 a.m., then gradually decrease over the next day and a half. Assuming the forecast was right. Assuming they could survive that long. He did the math again. Wood supply. Current temperature. 3 people in a space built for 2. The numbers still weren't good. Aurora seemed to read his expression. How bad is it? We'll manage. No, that's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Caleb moved to the window, peered out into the darkness. He could barely see 5 feet through the blowing snow. Your car. Where exactly did it go off the road? About a mile south, maybe less. There's a curve where the road bends around that big rock formation. I didn't see it in time. Anyone know you're here? She hesitated. No. No one? Family? Friends? Assistant? I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Of course you didn't. Caleb rubbed his face. So we're completely on our own. No one's looking for you, no one knows where you are, and we're stuck in a cabin with limited supplies while the worst storm in 2 decades tries to kill us. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing, it doesn't help. Maya stood up from her spot by the stove. I'm hungry. Caleb checked his watch again. Past midnight meant it was technically morning, and Maya had slept through dinner. Yeah, okay, let me see what we've got. The kitchen was barely a kitchen. A counter with a propane camping stove, a mini fridge that was now useless without the generator, and shelves lined with canned goods and dried food. Caleb pulled down a can of soup, dumped it into a pot, and set it on the camping stove. Aurora watched him work. Can I help? You can stay on that couch and not die. That would be helpful. I'm serious. Yeah. So am I. You've got frostbite on your feet. Moving around won't help. She looked down at her feet like she'd forgotten about them. They don't hurt. They will. Once they thaw out properly, they're going to hurt like hell. You'll wish they still didn't feel anything. How do you know? Because I've had frostbite. Twice. Once when I was 17 and thought I was tough enough to hunt in weather like this. Second time was the winter my daughter was born. Caleb stirred the soup. Her mother died 3 hours after delivery. Complications. I drove through a blizzard to get her to the hospital, and by the time we got there, it was too late. Walked back to my truck afterward and realized I couldn't feel my hands. The cabin was quiet except for the storm and the soft sound of soup starting to simmer. Maya had settled back by the stove, listening but not commenting. She'd heard this story before. I'm sorry, Aurora said quietly. About your wife. She wasn't my wife. We weren't married. Caleb kept his eyes on the soup. We were 23 years old and completely unprepared to be parents. She wanted to give Maya up for adoption. I wanted to keep her. We were still fighting about it when she went into labor. But you kept her. Didn't have much choice after Sarah died. No one else wanted her. Sarah's parents had both passed years before, and mine. He stopped, shook his head. Doesn't matter. Point is, Maya's mine. My responsibility? My daughter. She seems happy. Caleb looked at Maya, who was making Mr. Rabbit dance in the firelight. I do my best. Hey. The soup was ready. He poured it into 3 mismatched bowls and handed them out. Maya ate hers sitting cross-legged on the floor, blowing on each spoonful the way he'd taught her. Aurora held hers carefully, like she wasn't sure what to do with it. When's the last time you ate, Caleb asked. Yesterday. Maybe the day before. I don't remember. Eat. You need calories to stay warm. She obeyed, taking small sips. Her hands shook slightly, either from cold or something else. Caleb watched her and tried to reconcile this fragile woman with the Ice Queen from his memories. They didn't match. Something had broken in Aurora's steel, something fundamental. He wondered what had done it. Maya finished her soup first and set the bowl aside. Can Aurora stay in my room? I can sleep out here by the fire. No. Caleb's response was immediate. You're staying in your bed where it's warmest. Aurora can have the couch. But no arguments. Maya looked disappointed but didn't push. She knew better. When Dad used that tone, the discussion was over. Aurora set down her bowl. Thank you for the soup and for not letting me freeze to death. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. Still, you didn't have to save me. Given our history, most people wouldn't have. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that he was better than the kind of person who'd let someone die over a grudge. But he knew it wasn't entirely true. If Maya hadn't been watching, if he'd been alone, would he have pulled Aurora inside? Or would he have closed that door and told himself the mountain had chosen? He didn't know. Wasn't sure he wanted to know. The storm hit the cabin with renewed fury, wind shrieking like something alive and angry. The temperature was already dropping without the generator. Caleb could feel it in the way the air moved, in the cold that crept in through cracks he'd sealed twice but could never quite eliminate. Maya yawned, a huge, jaw-cracking yawn that made her look impossibly small. Bedtime, Caleb said. For real this time. I'm not tired. Yes, you are. Go brush your teeth. Maya grumbled but obeyed, heading to the bathroom with Mr. Rabbit under one arm. Caleb listened to the sound of water running, the ritual of his daughter getting ready for bed in the middle of a crisis, because routines mattered. Because normal mattered, especially when everything else was falling apart. Aurora watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're a good father. I'm all she's got." "That's not an answer." "Sure it is." Caleb started collecting the soup bowls. "I'm her father. That means I show up, take care of her, keep her safe. It's not complicated." Most people would say it's very complicated. Most people overthink things. Maya emerged from the bathroom, ready for bed in flannel pajamas covered with cartoon bears. She hugged Caleb tightly, standing on her toes to kiss his cheek. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart. Stay warm." "Oh, you too." She looked at Aurora. "Good night, Aurora. I hope your feet feel better." "Thank you, Maya. Good night." Maya disappeared into the bedroom, taking Mr. Rabbit with her. Caleb waited until he heard the creak of bed springs, then added 2 more logs to the fire. The wood supply was getting dangerously low, maybe enough for another day if he was careful. Maybe. Aurora shifted on the couch, wincing. "You were right, my feet are starting to hurt. Told you." "Is there anything I can do about it?" "Elevate them. Keep them warm but not hot. Don't walk on them if you can help it." Caleb grabbed a cushion from the chair and propped it under her feet. "It's going to get worse before it gets better. Just warning you." "How much worse?" "Depends on how bad the frostbite is. Could be mild. Could be severe enough that you lose some toes." He said it matter-of-factly, the way he'd say anything else. No point sugarcoating reality. Aurora's face went pale. "Lose? Probably not, but it's possible. We won't know until the swelling goes down and we can see what we're dealing with." Caleb sat down in the chair across from her. "You should try to sleep. We've got a long couple of days ahead of us." "I don't think I can sleep." "Then rest. Close your eyes. Conserve energy." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you being nice to me after everything?" "But, I'm not being nice. I'm being practical. You dying won't solve anything, and it'll traumatize my daughter. So I'm keeping you alive. That's all this is. I don't believe you." "Believe whatever you want." Aurora pulled the blankets up to her chin. The firelight caught the planes of her face, made her look younger and more vulnerable than she probably wanted to appear. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry. About your brother. About all of it." Caleb didn't respond. Didn't trust himself to say anything that wouldn't come out bitter and sharp. Instead, he stood and checked the windows, making sure they were sealed as tight as possible. Then he added another log to the fire and settled back in his chair. The storm raged on outside. Inside, the cabin held its warmth like a fragile thing that could shatter at any moment. Aurora's breathing eventually evened out into something that might have been sleep. Caleb sat awake, watching the fire burn down, thinking about the past and the woman on his couch and the storm that had brought them together. He thought about his brother, about the patents that had been stolen, the research that had been claimed by the Steel Corporation, the lawsuit that had drained what little money the Ward family had left, about standing at Daniel's funeral and watching it rain while the Steele family's lawyers sent flowers, like that meant something. He thought about the moment he'd found Aurora in the snow, the choice he'd made, the one he was still making every minute he kept her warm and safe under his roof. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, the fire burned. And somewhere between those two extremes, Caleb Ward sat guard over a past he couldn't change, and a present he didn't understand, while his daughter slept and the woman who'd destroyed his family slowly came back to life on his couch. The night stretched on, long and cold and unforgiving, just like everything else on this mountain. Caleb woke to the sound of Aurora screaming. He was on his feet before he was fully conscious, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the cabin for threats. The fire had burned down to embers. Gray morning light filtered through the snow-covered windows, and Aurora sat on the couch, with her face twisted in agony, both hands wrapped around her left foot. "What happened?" He set the rifle down and moved closer. "I tried to stand." Her voice came out strangled. "I needed to use the bathroom, and I thought—" She gasped. "It feels like someone's driving nails through my feet. That's the frostbite. The nerves waking up." Caleb crouched down and carefully unwrapped her hands from her foot. The skin was mottled red and purple, swollen around the toes. Not as bad as it could have been, but not good either. "You can't walk on these, Not for a few days at least. I can't just lie here. You don't have a choice. I need to use the bathroom, Caleb, unless you expect me to. Daddy? Maya's voice came from the bedroom doorway. She stood there in her bare pajamas, hair sticking up in about 15 directions, Mr. Rabbit dangling from one hand. What's wrong? Nothing, sweetheart. Go back to bed. It's early. Aurora's crying. I'm not crying, Aurora said, but her eyes were wet and her jaw was clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Maya patted over on bare feet, completely unbothered by the cold that had Caleb's breath fogging. Kids were like that, heat generators that didn't know what hypothermia was. She studied Aurora's face with the serious expression of a tiny doctor. Your feet hurt really bad, huh? Yes. When I broke my arm last year, Daddy gave me the special medicine, the one that tastes like fake cherry. It helped. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. He'd forgotten about Maya's arm. She'd fallen out of a tree trying to rescue a bird's nest, landed wrong, snapped her radius clean through. He'd driven her down the mountain to the emergency room, sat with her while they set it, brought her home with a cast and a prescription for children's ibuprofen. I'll get some, he said, but first we need to solve the bathroom problem. Aurora's face went red. I can manage. No, you can't. Your feet won't hold your weight. Caleb stood up. I'm going to help you. Don't argue. Caleb, do you want to fall and crack your head open? Because that's what'll happen if you try this alone. He held out his hand. Come on. I've seen worse things than a woman who needs help to the bathroom. Aurora stared at his hand like it might bite her. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Caleb pulled her up carefully, getting his shoulder under her arm to support her weight. She was lighter than she should have been, all bone and not much else. When was the last time she'd eaten a real meal? Before yesterday, probably. Maybe longer. They made it to the bathroom in awkward, shuffling steps, Aurora hissing in pain with every movement. Caleb helped her to the door and stepped back. You good from here? Yes, thank you. Yell if you need help. He closed the door and leaned against the wall, listening to make sure she didn't fall. Maya appeared at his elbow, still holding Mr. Rabbit. Is she going to be okay? Eventually. Do you still hate her? The question hit harder than it should have. Caleb looked down at his daughter's upturned face, those dark eyes that saw too much. I don't hate her. You sound like you do. It's complicated. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to explain. Maya hugged Mr. Rabbit. She seems nice, sad, but nice. She's not... Caleb stopped himself. What was he going to say? She's not nice? That her family destroyed ours and she let it happen? That looking at her brought back every bitter memory he'd spent years trying to bury? It's just complicated, sweetheart. Can we leave it at that? Maya shrugged, which was 6-year-old for I guess so, but I think you're being weird about it. She wandered back to the main room, climbed into the chair by the fire, and started whispering to Mr. Rabbit in the private language she used when she thought no one was listening. The bathroom door opened. Aurora stood there gripping the door frame, her face pale and sweating despite the cold. I need to lie down. Caleb got his shoulder under her arm again and half carried her back to the couch. She collapsed onto it with a sound that was part relief and part pain. Her feet were worse now, darker and more swollen. He grabbed the first aid kit and found the ibuprofen Maya had mentioned. Take 3 of these. It'll help with the inflammation. Aurora swallowed them dry, grimacing. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't die in my cabin. The paperwork would be a nightmare. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I'll do my best. Caleb checked his watch. 6:15 in the morning. The storm was still going, snow piling up against the windows until the cabin felt like a cave. He moved to the door and tried to open it. The snow had drifted against it overnight, and it took all his strength to force it open a crack. White. Nothing but white as far as he could see, which wasn't far. The wind had died down some, but the snow was still falling thick and steady. He grabbed the snow shovel from beside the door and started clearing a path to the generator shed. It took 20 minutes to dig through drifts that were chest-high in places. By the time he reached the shed, his arms were burning and his lungs hurt from breathing frozen air. The generator sat silent and cold, the fuel tank completely empty. He'd known it would be. But seeing it confirmed felt like a punch to the gut anyway. Caleb checked the backup propane tank for the camping stove, half full. Maybe 3 days of cooking if he was careful. After that, they'd be eating cold food out of cans. The woodpile was worse. Maybe 20 pieces left, and that was being generous. Enough for today if he rationed it. Tomorrow would be a problem. He loaded his arms with wood and fought his way back to the cabin. Aurora and Maya both looked up as he entered, trailing snow. "How bad?" Aurora asked. "We've got heat for today. Maybe tomorrow if we're lucky." Caleb stacked the wood by the stove and started building up the fire. "After that, we're going to have to get creative." "What does that mean?" "It means we huddle together and hope the storm breaks before we freeze to death." Maya looked up from her conversation with Mr. Rabbit. "We're not going to freeze, right, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart, we're not going to freeze." Caleb hoped he wasn't lying. "I promise." The fire caught and spread, pushing warmth back into the cabin. It wasn't enough, would never be enough with the temperature outside dropping into the -20s, but it was something. Caleb pulled out the camping stove and started heating water for oatmeal. "Can I help?" Aurora asked from the couch. "You can stay put and heal." "I feel useless." "Get used to it. You're going to be useless for a while." She flinched at that, and Caleb felt a small stab of guilt. He was being harsher than necessary. She was hurt and stranded and probably scared, even if she was hiding it well. But every time he looked at her, he saw that courtroom, saw his brother's reputation torn apart by lawyers who didn't care about truth, only winning. Maya carried her bowl of oatmeal to the couch and sat down next to Aurora, legs swinging. "Do you have any kids?" "No." "Are you married?" "No." "Do you have a boyfriend?" "Maya," Caleb warned, "that's enough questions. I'm just asking." "Well, stop asking. Eat your breakfast." Aurora smiled despite everything. "It's okay. I don't mind." She looked at Maya. "No boyfriend. I've been too busy with work." "What kind of work?" "I run a company, a big one. We make technology products." "Like phones?" "Sometimes. Other things too. Computer chips, software, equipment for factories." Maya's eyes went wide. "That sounds important." "It is, or it's supposed to be." Aurora stared down at her hands. "Sometimes I'm not sure anymore." "Why not?" "Yes, because..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes you spend so long doing what you're supposed to do that you forget why you started doing it in the first place. And then one day you wake up and realize you don't even know who you are anymore." Maya nodded like this made perfect sense, which it probably did to her. 6-year-olds understood existential crises better than most adults gave them credit for. Caleb finished his oatmeal in silence, listening to his daughter and the woman who'd ruined his family have a philosophical conversation about identity and purpose. It was surreal. Wrong. Like two parts of his life that should never have intersected were bleeding into each other. "Why did you really come here?" he asked suddenly. "And don't give me that line about apologizing. Nobody drives up a mountain in a blizzard just to say they're sorry." Aurora set down her bowl. Maya watched them both, sensing the shift in tone. "I told you, I needed to..." "Bull. You could have sent a letter, made a phone call, hell. You could have sent one of your assistants if you really wanted to apologize face to face." Caleb leaned forward. "So I'll ask again. Why are you really here?" Aurora was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows. Finally, she spoke. "I left." "Left what?" "Everything. The company. My family. The life I'd been living for 30 years. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "2 weeks ago, I walked out of a board meeting in the middle of a presentation, got in my car and started driving. No plan, no destination, just driving. And you ended up here." I ended up a lot of places. Portland, Boise, some town in Montana I can't even remember the name of. I was trying to figure out what to do next, who I wanted to be if I wasn't Aurora Steele, CEO of Steele Corporation. She looked up. "I drove past this mountain and remembered. Your brother, the lawsuit, you. I looked up where you were living and I thought maybe if I could apologize, if I could start making things right, then maybe I could figure out how to move forward." "So this is about you feeling better about yourself?" "No, maybe. I don't know." Aurora rubbed her face. I'm not explaining this well. You're explaining it fine. You had a crisis of conscience and decided to ease your guilt by tracking me down. Very noble. That's not, isn't it? Caleb stood up. You destroyed my family, took everything we built and claimed it as yours. And now you want me to absolve you so you can start your new life with a clean slate. I'm not asking for absolution. Then what are you asking for? Aurora met his eyes. Nothing. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. That I know what my family did was wrong. That I should have stopped it, and I didn't. And I've regretted it every day since. Well, congratulations. I know now. Feel better? No. Good. Maya's small voice cut through the tension. Daddy, you're being mean. I'm being honest. It's the same thing right now. Caleb wanted to argue, but Maya was looking at him with that expression she got when she was disappointed, and he couldn't stand that look. Never could. He grabbed his coat. I'm going to check the perimeter. Make sure nothing's blocked. Caleb, stay here, both of you. He stepped outside into the storm before Aurora could finish whatever she was going to say. The cold hit him like a wall, stealing his breath. He didn't care. He needed space. Needed to think without Aurora's presence filling up every corner of his cabin. The snow was still falling, would probably fall for another 12 hours at least. Caleb made his way around the cabin, checking the windows, clearing snow from the ventilation, making sure nothing critical was buried. It was busy work. He knew it. But it was better than sitting inside with Aurora and the weight of history pressing down on both of them. When he came back in 20 minutes later, stamping snow from his boots, Maya and Aurora were playing cards at the small table. Some game Caleb didn't recognize. With rules Maya was apparently making up as she went along. I win again, Maya declared, slapping down a card with triumph. That's 3 times in a row, Aurora said. You're very good at this. Mr. Rabbit taught me. He's excellent at cards. I can tell. Caleb hung up his coat and moved to the fire. The wood was burning down faster than he'd like. He added another piece and watched the flames catch. How's it looking out there? Aurora asked. Bad. Storm's not letting up. How long do you think it'll last? Oh, go worry. It. Original forecast said 36 hours total. We're about 12 hours in, so another day and a half if they were right. Caleb poked at the fire with a stick. Caleb poked at the... But forecasts this time of year are more guesses than predictions. Could be longer. And we have enough supplies? For now. It wasn't really an answer, and Aurora was smart enough to know it. But she didn't push. Just went back to playing cards with Maya, letting his daughter win with an ease that suggested she was actually good at cards and was deliberately losing. The day crawled past. Caleb rationed the wood, feeding the fire just enough to keep the cabin from freezing, but not enough to waste what little they had left. He made sandwiches for lunch from bread that was starting to go stale, and peanut butter that was more oil than solid. Maya ate hers without complaint. Aurora picked at hers like she wasn't sure what to do with it. You need to eat, Caleb said. I'm not hungry. Don't care. Eat anyway. I don't take orders well. Then consider it a strong suggestion. He pushed the sandwich closer to her. You're already weak from the cold and the frostbite. If you don't eat, you're going to get weaker. And if you get too weak, your body won't be able to fight off infection or regulate your temperature. So eat the sandwich. Aurora stared at him for a moment. Then, slowly, she picked it up and took a bite. Another. She finished the whole thing in stubborn, methodical bites that suggested she was eating to prove a point rather than because she wanted to. Maya watched this exchange with interest. You guys fight weird. We're not fighting, Caleb said. Yes, you are. You just do it quiet. Aurora laughed. It was a small sound, rusty, like she hadn't used it in a while. She's perceptive. Tell me about it. The afternoon darkened early the way winter afternoons did in the mountains. By 3 o'clock, the light outside was fading to gray. The temperature was dropping too. Caleb could feel it in the way the cold seeped through the walls, and the frost forming on the inside of the windows despite the fire. He checked the thermometer mounted near the door. 48 degrees inside the cabin. Not great, but not deadly. Yet. It's getting colder, Aurora observed. Yeah. How cold before it's dangerous? Depends on how long we're exposed. Below 40, hypothermia becomes a real risk. Below 30, it's almost guaranteed unless we stay right next to the fire. Caleb added another piece of wood, watching his supply dwindle. We've got maybe 6 hours of wood left. After that, we huddle together. Yeah. Aurora pulled the blankets tighter around herself. Her feet were propped up on pillows, still swollen and angry looking. I really did pick the worst possible time to have a breakdown, didn't I? Probably. Story of my life, bad timing. What do you mean? She was quiet for a moment. Maya had fallen asleep in the chair, worn out from a day of forced indoor activity. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the storm continued its endless assault. I was 14 when I realized my family was built on lies, Aurora said finally. My father came home one night, drunk, celebrating some big patent approval. I asked him about it, and he told me everything. How he'd stolen the research from his partner, how they'd buried the evidence, how they'd destroyed anyone who tried to fight back. Caleb felt something cold settle in his chest. Daniel. He was talking about Daniel. Yes, your brother. Aurora stared at the fire. I didn't know what to do with that information. I was 14. What was I supposed to do? Turn in my own father? Destroy my family? I convinced myself it wasn't my problem, that adults would handle it, that the truth would come out somehow. But it didn't. No, it didn't. And by the time the lawsuit happened, I was 25 and already working for the company, already complicit. I told myself I couldn't speak up because it would destroy everything, ruin thousands of jobs, tank the stock price, hurt innocent people who had nothing to do with what my father had done. So you protected your family and destroyed mine. Yes. Aurora's voice cracked. And I've hated myself for it every day since. I've tried to make up for it, donated money to causes your brother supported, funded scholarships in his name, tried to run the company better than my father did. But none of it matters, does it? Because at the end of the day, I'm still the person who sat silent while your brother's reputation was torn apart. Caleb didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to tell her she was right, that nothing she did would ever make up for what she'd taken from him. But another part, a smaller, quieter part, recognized the weight she was carrying, the guilt that had been eating at her for years. Why now? He asked. Why walk away now, after all this time? Because I looked in the mirror 2 weeks ago and didn't recognize the person looking back. Because I realized I'd spent 15 years trying to atone for something by becoming exactly like the people I was supposed to be better than. Because I'm 30 years old and I have no friends, no relationships, no life outside of work, and I finally admitted to myself that I can't keep living like this. She looked at him, and for the first time since she'd collapsed on his doorstep, Caleb saw past the guilt and the pain to something else. Exhaustion. The bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been fighting a losing battle for too long. I don't expect you to forgive me, Aurora said. I don't expect anything from you, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I know what was done to your family was wrong, and that I'm trying to be better. Caleb stared at the fire, watching the flames dance. He thought about his brother, about the night Daniel had called him, voice shaking with rage and betrayal, telling him about the stolen patents and the lawsuit that was coming, about standing at that funeral in the rain and wondering how everything had gone so wrong. He thought about the bitterness he'd carried for 5 years, the anger that had become so familiar it felt like part of him, the hatred he'd nursed because letting it go meant facing the fact that his brother was gone and nothing would bring him back. I don't forgive you, he said finally. I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Aurora nodded slowly. I understand. But I don't think you're the same person who sat in that courtroom. She looked up, surprised. That person wouldn't have driven up here in a blizzard to apologize, wouldn't have walked away from everything she'd built, wouldn't be sitting here right now admitting she was wrong. As Caleb met her eyes. So I don't forgive you, but I believe you when you say you're trying to be better. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But it's what you're getting. Maya stirred in the chair, mumbling something about rabbits and snowmen. Caleb checked his watch. Almost 5 o'clock. The cabin was getting colder, the fire burning lower despite his efforts to conserve wood. Aurora shifted on the couch, wincing as her feet moved. How much longer before we have to... A few hours. Maybe less. Caleb stood up and checked the thermometer again. 44 degrees now, dropping faster than he'd hoped. We'll eat dinner first. Get some hot food in us. Then we'll figure out the sleeping arrangements. Sleeping arrangements? Body heat. It's the only way we're getting through the night once the fire dies. He saw her face go pale. Don't worry. I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate, but we're going to have to stay close if we want to survive. All three of us. Aurora swallowed hard. Okay. Caleb heated up canned stew on the camping stove, using up more of their precious propane supply. But they needed hot food, needed the calories and the warmth it would provide. He served it in bowls and woke Maya gently. Dinner time, sweetheart. Maya sat up, rubbing her eyes. I had a dream about Mr. Rabbit. He was a giant, and we were riding him down the mountain like a sled. That sounds fun. It was scary too. We were going really fast, and there were trees everywhere. Well, you're safe now. Eat your stew, Ait. They ate in silence, the only sound the scrape of spoons against bowls and the constant background noise of the storm. The stew was bland and oversalted, but it was warm and filling. Maya finished hers quickly. Aurora ate slowly, methodically, like she was forcing every bite down. After dinner, Caleb cleaned up and checked their supplies one more time. The reality of their situation was becoming harder to ignore. They had maybe 4 hours of wood left. After that, they'd be dependent entirely on body heat to survive. The temperature outside had dropped to negative 25 degrees. Inside, it was 41 and falling. Caleb pulled out every blanket and sleeping bag he owned, dragged the mattress from Maya's bed into the main room, and positioned it as close to the fire as he dared. Built up the fire one last time, using 3 precious pieces of wood to create enough heat to warm them before they had to let it die. Aurora watched him work. You've done this before. Once, my first winter up here. The generator failed during a cold snap and I had to keep Maya warm for 2 days until I could get down the mountain for parts. He spread blankets over the mattress. It's not comfortable, but it works. I trust you. The words hung in the air between them. Caleb looked at Aurora, really looked at her for the first time since pulling her from the snow. She was scared, trying to hide it, but scared, and trusting him to keep her alive even though he had every reason not to. We're going to be okay, he said. All of us. Maya climbed onto the mattress, already yawning. This is like camping. Exactly like camping, except colder. And with Aurora. Yeah, and with Aurora. Aurora moved from this couch, slowly. Teeth gritted against the pain in her feet. Caleb helped her to the mattress, and she settled on one side, leaving space in the middle for Maya. Caleb took the other side, closest to the fire so he could tend it as long as possible. They arranged themselves under the pile of blankets, awkward and careful not to touch more than necessary. Maya, unbothered by the strangeness of it all, curled up between them with Mr. Rabbit tucked under her chin. Tell me a story, Daddy. Which one? The one about Mom. Caleb felt Aurora shift beside them, but didn't look at her. Your mom was the bravest person I ever met. She was scared of a lot of things, spiders, heights, the dark. But when it came time to have you, she wasn't scared at all. She looked at me and said, this is going to hurt like hell, but it'll be worth it. And she was right. Even though she died, because she gave me you, and you're worth everything. Maya smiled sleepily. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. Within minutes, Maya was asleep, her breathing soft and even. The fire crackled low. Outside, the storm showed no signs of stopping. Aurora spoke quietly. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. You don't talk about her mother much, Sarah. Not much to say. We were kids. We weren't ready. She died before we could figure it out. Caleb stared at the ceiling. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if she'd lived. If we would have made it work or just made each other miserable. Do you miss her? I miss who she might have been, who we might have been together. But I can't miss what I never really had. The temperature continued to drop. Caleb fed the last pieces of wood to the fire one by one, stretching them as long as he could. 40 degrees. 38. 36. Aurora started shivering despite the blankets. Caleb shifted closer, letting his body heat radiate toward her and Maya. It was the only option left. "This is insane," Aurora whispered. "We shouldn't be in this situation, but we are." "I'm sorry, this is my fault, Duck." "Stop apologizing. It doesn't change anything." Caleb adjusted the blankets, tucking them tighter around all three of them. "Just focus on staying warm." The fire burned down to embers. The temperature dropped to 34 degrees. And in the darkness of the cabin, three people who shouldn't have been together huddled close against the cold. Their breath fogging in the freezing air, their survival dependent on nothing more than body heat and stubborn will. The storm raged on outside. Inside, they held on. Caleb woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of teeth chattering. Not his, Aurora's. He opened his eyes in the darkness. The fire was completely dead, just cold ash in the stove. The cabin had gone silent except for the wind outside and the violent shaking coming from Aurora's side of the mattress. He could feel her trembling through the blankets, her whole body convulsing with cold. "Aurora!" He kept his voice low so he wouldn't wake Maya. No response. "Aurora, can you hear me?" Still nothing. Just the chattering and the shaking. Caleb sat up carefully, extracting himself from the tangle of blankets without disturbing his daughter. He moved around to Aurora's side and put his hand on her shoulder. Her skin was ice cold through her shirt. Her lips were blue in the faint moonlight that filtered through the snow-covered windows. Hypothermia. She was sliding into hypothermia. Damn it! Caleb made a decision he knew she'd probably hate him for later. He pulled back the blankets and positioned himself behind her, wrapping his arms around her torso and pulling her against his chest. Skin to skin was the fastest way to transfer heat, but they didn't have time to strip down properly. This would have to work. Aurora made a small sound of protest, but she was too cold to fight him. Caleb held her tight, willing the warmth from his body into hers. She was shaking so hard he could feel his teeth rattling in his skull. "Come on," he muttered. "Stay with me." Minutes passed. 5. 10. Gradually, the shaking started to ease. Aurora's breathing, which had been fast and shallow, began to slow. The rigid tension in her body relaxed slightly. "Caleb?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm here." "What?" "You were going into hypothermia. I had to warm you up." "I'm so cold." "I know. Just stay still. Let me do this." She didn't argue. Couldn't, probably. Caleb kept his arms wrapped around her, sharing what heat he had. The temperature in the cabin had to be below freezing now. Every breath came out as fog. He could see frost forming on the walls, delicate patterns that would be beautiful if they weren't so deadly. Maya stirred between them, making small sleeping sounds. Caleb checked her with one hand, felt her warm skin, and relaxed slightly. Kids ran hot. She'd be okay for a while longer. Aurora's shaking had mostly stopped, but she was still dangerously cold. Caleb adjusted his position, trying to cover as much of her as possible with his body. It was intimate in a way that made him uncomfortable, but survival didn't care about comfort. "Your brother," Aurora said suddenly. "Tell me about him." "What?" "Daniel. I want to know what he was really like, not the person the lawyers made him out to be. The real person." Caleb was quiet for a moment, trying to figure out why she was asking. Then he realized she was trying to stay conscious, trying to keep her mind working so she didn't slip away into the cold. "He was stubborn," Caleb said finally. "Couldn't let anything go. If he thought something was wrong, he'd fight it until he won or it killed him. Guess it killed him." "How did he die?" "Heart attack. He was 41 years old and the stress of the lawsuit just—" Caleb stopped, swallowed hard. "The doctor said it was a combination of things. High blood pressure, genetic factors, stress. But I know what really killed him. It was watching everything he'd built get torn apart. Watching people he trusted turn on him, dying knowing the truth would never come out." Aurora was silent for a long moment. "I'm sorry. You've said that. Well, I'll keep saying it until it means something." "It won't. Not to me." Caleb shifted slightly, adjusting the blankets over both of them. "But maybe it means something to you. Maybe that's enough. Is it? I don't know. You tell me. Aurora pressed closer to him, seeking warmth. Caleb could feel her heartbeat against his chest, fast but steady. He sounds like he was a good man. The best. He practically raised me after our parents died. I was 15, he was 26. Could have put me in foster care, went on with his life. But he didn't. Took guardianship, made sure I finished school, helped me figure out what I wanted to do with my life. What did you want to do? Architecture. I was going to design buildings. Had a scholarship to state school and everything. Caleb laughed bitterly. Then the lawsuit happened and I had to drop out to help Daniel fight it. Used my scholarship money to pay lawyers who didn't do a damn thing except lose. I didn't know. Why would you? You weren't looking at the people your family was destroying. You were just signing paperwork. The words came out harsher than he intended, but Aurora didn't flinch. You're right. I wasn't looking. I should have been. Maya rolled over in her sleep. One small hand reaching out to touch Caleb's arm. He smoothed her hair back gently, checked that she was still warm enough. She mumbled something about pancakes and settled back down. She's wonderful, Aurora said quietly. Your daughter. Yeah. Does she know about her mother? Oh, she knows Sarah died, knows it wasn't anyone's fault, just one of those things that happens sometimes. I've got pictures, stories. I make sure she knows where she came from. That's good. That's important. Didn't have that myself. My parents died when I was young. Car accident. I barely remember them. Daniel had stories, but it's not the same as actually remembering. Caleb adjusted his grip on Aurora, felt her shiver slightly. I didn't want that for Maya. Wanted her to know her mother, even if it's just through stories. What was Sarah like? Caleb thought about it. Complicated. She was funny and mean in equal measure, could make you laugh until you couldn't breathe, then turn around and cut you down with one sentence. We fought constantly, about everything. But when she found out she was pregnant, something changed. She got softer, scared, but softer. Did you love her? I don't know. We were 23. I thought I did, but looking back, I'm not sure either of us knew what love actually was. We knew passion. We knew fighting and making up and fighting again. But love? He shook his head. Maybe we would have figured it out if she'd lived. Maybe not. The temperature continued to drop. Caleb could feel the cold seeping through the blankets, through his clothes, into his bones. He pulled Aurora closer, tucked Maya tighter against them both. They were a knot of bodies and blankets in the freezing darkness, holding on to each other because there was nothing else left to hold. Tell me about your life, Caleb said, before you ran away. Aurora was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, there's not much to tell. I woke up at 5 every morning, worked out with a personal trainer, ate breakfast while reading reports. Got to the office by 7, meetings until noon, working lunch, more meetings. Left the office around 8, sometimes later. Went home to an empty apartment, slept 4 hours. Did it again the next day. That's not a life. No, it's not. But it's what I thought I was supposed to do, what everyone expected. My father built that company from nothing, and I was supposed to protect it, grow it, make it more successful than he ever did. Did you? Yes, the company's worth 3 times what it was when I took over. We've expanded into new markets, developed new technologies. By every measurable metric, I'm a success. But, Mom. But I'm 30 years old and I've never had a real relationship. Never traveled anywhere that wasn't a business trip. Never done anything just because I wanted to. I've optimized every aspect of my existence for productivity and profit. And I woke up 2 weeks ago and realized I couldn't remember the last time I was actually happy. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. So you left. So I left. Walked out in the middle of a presentation about quarterly projections and just kept walking. Got in my car and started driving. My assistant called 47 times that first day. My father called 16 times. I didn't answer any of them. What did you tell them? Nothing. I sent one email to my assistant saying I needed time off and to cancel all my meetings until further notice. Then I turned off my phone and drove. They're probably looking for you. I'm sure they are, but they won't find me. Not up here. Not in the middle of a blizzard. Aurora shifted slightly in his arms. Part of me wonders if I subconsciously wanted this. Wanted to get trapped somewhere so I'd have an excuse not to go back. That's a hell of a rationalization for almost dying. Better than admitting I'm just self-destructive and stupid. You're not stupid, reckless maybe, but not stupid. They fell silent again. Caleb could hear the wind howling outside, a sound like the mountain itself screaming. The cabin creaked and groaned under the assault. Somewhere in the walls, something cracked with a sound like a gunshot. Maya jerked awake. "Daddy? I'm here, sweetheart. It's so cold." "I know. Come here." Caleb shifted so Maya was sandwiched between him and Aurora, both adults wrapping around her like a cocoon. She was shivering now, too, her small body trying to generate heat it couldn't maintain. Caleb pulled every blanket tighter, layered them more carefully, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "Tell me a story," Maya said, her teeth starting to chatter. "Which one?" "Make up a new one. About a princess who wasn't scared of anything." Caleb looked at Aurora over Maya's head. In the faint light, their eyes met. Aurora nodded slightly. "Once there was a princess," Caleb began, "who lived in a tall tower in a big city. She had everything she could ever want. Fancy clothes, expensive cars, people who did whatever she asked. But she wasn't happy. Because even though she had everything, she didn't have anything that mattered." "Like what?" Maya asked. "Like friends. Like adventures. Like a life that was hers instead of someone else's." Caleb continued the story, making it up as he went. One day, the princess looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. So she did something crazy. She left the tower. Just walked out and started traveling, trying to find out who she really was without all the fancy things. Where did she go, Mat? Everywhere. She went to the ocean and the desert and the mountains. She met all kinds of people. Some were nice, some weren't. Some helped her, some didn't. And slowly, she started to figure out who she was underneath all the stuff she'd been carrying around. Aurora's arms tightened around Maya. Caleb could feel her breathing against his chest, steady but shallow. "Did she find what she was looking for?" Maya asked. "I don't know yet. The story's not over." But she will, right? Find what she's looking for." "Dubois is arsus yeah." "Maybe. Or maybe she'll realize she was looking for the wrong thing all along. Maybe what she really needed was to stop looking and start being." Maya considered this seriously. That's a weird ending. Most real stories have weird endings. I like it anyway. But the cold was getting worse. Caleb could feel his own body starting to lose heat, despite his best efforts. They needed more warmth, needed something beyond just blankets and body heat. But there was nothing left. No wood, no fuel, no options. Aurora spoke quietly near his ear. "We're not going to make it through the night, are we?" "Don't say that. I can feel it. The temperature, it's still dropping. We'll make it. Caleb, we'll make it." He said it firmly, like he could make it true through force of will alone. "I've survived worse than this. So have you. We just have to hold on until morning. When the sun comes up, it'll warm things up enough that we can get through another day. And if the storm doesn't break, then we survive another night, and another, however many it takes." "You're stubborn." Runs in the family." Maya had gone quiet between them. Caleb checked her pulse, felt it beating strong and steady under his fingers. She'd fallen back asleep, her body conserving energy the way children's bodies knew to do. Smart kid. Smarter than either adult giving her warmth. The hours crawled past. 3 in the morning, 4. The coldest part of the night, when the darkness felt eternal and survival felt like something that happened to other people. Caleb held tight to Aurora and Maya, willing warmth into both of them, refusing to let the cold take anyone else he cared about. Wait, cared about? He pushed the thought away. This wasn't the time for that kind of self-examination. This was the time for survival and nothing else. Aurora started shaking again around 4:30. Not as bad as before, but bad enough. Caleb shifted positions, put himself more directly against her back, shared more of his body heat. She was so cold. Too cold. He could feel her life force dimming like a candle in the wind. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Don't you dare give up now." "I'm trying. Try harder. Bossy." "You have no idea." She made a sound that might have been a laugh if she'd had the energy for it. "If I don't make it, you're making it. But if I don't, tell your daughter thank you for being kind to someone who didn't deserve it. Aurora! And tell yourself," she paused, gathering strength, "tell yourself that I meant what I said, about being sorry, about trying to be better. It wasn't just words. I know. Do you?" Caleb thought about it. About the woman who'd shown up on his doorstep, half frozen and desperate. About the conversations they'd had, the things she'd revealed. About the way she'd played cards with Maya and listened to his stories and apologized over and over, even when he'd told her it didn't matter. "Yeah," he said finally. "I do." The first hints of dawn started filtering through the windows around 5:30. Not real light yet, just the sky going from black to dark gray. But it was something. A promise that morning would come eventually. The temperature in the cabin had stabilized at 28 degrees, still freezing, still dangerous, but not dropping anymore. Caleb took that as a win. Maya woke as the light grew stronger. "Is it morning?" "Almost. I'm hungry, Ann." "I know, sweetheart. We'll eat soon as there's enough light to see what we're doing." "Is Aurora okay?" Caleb looked down at the woman in his arms. Her color was better than it had been in the middle of the night, her breathing more regular. But she was still unconscious, her body shut down to conserve energy. "She will be," he said, hoping it was true. Maya wiggled out of the blankets and immediately started shivering. Caleb pulled her back in. "Stay here, stay warm." "I have to pee." "Can you hold it?" "No." "Okay, quick as you can. Don't touch anything metal." Maya nodded seriously and scurried to the bathroom. Caleb heard the door close, then water running. She was back in under a minute, diving back under the blankets and pressing her cold feet against his legs. "Your feet are freezing." "I know. Warm me up." Ye. He rubbed her feet between his hands until they stopped feeling like ice. Maya curled up against Aurora, who shifted slightly but didn't wake. They stayed like that as the light grew stronger, 3 people in a pile of blankets alive against all odds. The storm had lessened. Caleb could tell by the sound of the wind, which had gone from a scream to a steady howl. Still dangerous, still snowing, but not the absolute chaos of the night before. Around 7, Aurora's eyes opened. She looked disoriented at first, confused about where she was and why there was a man wrapped around her. Then memory returned and she relaxed slightly. "We made it." "Yeah, we made it. I thought—" She stopped, swallowed. "In the middle of the night, I thought I was dying." "You almost were, hypothermia. I had to warm you up. Is that why you're—" She gestured vaguely at their current position. "Yeah, sorry. Should have asked first, but you weren't exactly in a position to consent. It's okay. You saved my life. Again. Again." Maya popped her head up between them. "You're awake." "I was worried. You were so cold last night. Daddy said you were going to be okay, but you felt like an ice cube." Aurora managed a weak smile. "I'm better now, thanks to you and your dad. Mostly Dad. I just slept. Sleeping helped too." Caleb extracted himself from the tangle of limbs and blankets and immediately regretted it. The air was brutally cold. He grabbed his coat and pulled it on, then moved to the windows to assess the situation outside. The snow had piled up against the cabin until it was almost to the windows. Drifts covered everything, turning the landscape into an alien world of white. But the sky was lighter, the snow falling slower. The worst of the storm had passed. "How's it look?" Aurora asked. "Better. Storm's breaking up. We might be able to dig out by tomorrow." "What about today?" "Today we stay inside and try not to freeze to death." Caleb checked the thermometer. Still 28 degrees inside. They'd need to get the fire going again somehow, but there was no wood left. I'm going to check the shed, see if there's anything I missed. Be careful.
Always am.
He pulled on boots and gloves and forced the door open. The snow had drifted against it, and it took all his strength to create enough of an opening to squeeze through. The cold outside hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and making his eyes water. The shed was almost completely buried. Caleb dug through waist-deep snow, finally got the door open, and surveyed what was left. Empty fuel cans. A toolbox. Some old furniture he'd been meaning to either repair or burn. The furniture. Caleb grabbed the ancient rocking chair his brother had built years ago. It was broken in 3 places, unsalvageable. He'd kept it for sentimental reasons, but sentiment didn't keep people warm. He carried it back to the cabin, broke it down into burnable pieces, and started building a fire. Aurora watched from the mattress. That looked like it meant something to you. It did. Daniel made it. Caleb struck a match and held it to the kindling. But he'd understand. He always said people matter more than things. The fire caught slowly, reluctantly, but it caught. Warmth started spreading through the cabin again. Not much, but enough to bring the temperature up to something that wouldn't kill them. Maya appeared at his elbow. Can we have breakfast now? Yeah, let's see what we've got. The food situation was getting dire. Caleb inventoried what was left. 2 cans of soup, 1 can of beans, half a loaf of stale bread, peanut butter, and some crackers that had gone soft. Enough for maybe 2 more days if they rationed carefully. He made oatmeal on the camping stove, stretching it with extra water to make it go further. It was thin and tasteless, but it was hot, and that was what mattered. They ate in silence, too hungry and cold to make conversation. After breakfast, Aurora tried to stand. Her feet held her weight for about 3 seconds before she collapsed back onto the mattress with a cry of pain. Don't, Caleb said. You're not ready. I need to move. I can't just lie here. You can and you will. Your feet are still recovering. You put weight on them now, you'll do permanent damage. I hate this. I hate being helpless. Get used to it. You're going to be helpless for a while. Aurora glared at him, but there was no real heat in it. She was too tired, too cold, too beaten down by everything that had happened. You're enjoying this. Little bit. Sadist. Realist. Maya climbed back onto the mattress and curled up next to Aurora. Want to hear about my dream? I had another one about Mr. Rabbit. This time, he was a detective solving mysteries. Aurora wrapped an arm around the small girl. Tell me everything. Caleb watched them from across the room. His daughter and the woman whose family had destroyed his, curled up together like they'd known each other for years instead of barely 2 days. It should have bothered him, should have felt wrong somehow, but it didn't. It felt right in a way he couldn't explain and wasn't ready to examine. The day passed slowly. The fire burned through the broken chair piece by piece. Caleb rationed it carefully, keeping the temperature just high enough to survive but not high enough to be comfortable. Every degree counted now. Around noon, the snow stopped completely. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in 2 days, sending shafts of light through the cabin windows. It was beautiful and cruel at the same time. Beautiful because it meant the storm was over, cruel because the sunlight did nothing to warm the frozen landscape outside. Aurora dozed on and off throughout the day. The hypothermia had taken more out of her than she wanted to admit. Caleb checked her feet regularly, watching for signs of infection or tissue death. They looked bad, swollen and discolored, but not catastrophically bad. She might keep all her toes. Might. Maya entertained herself by drawing pictures in the frost on the windows and telling Mr. Rabbit elaborate stories about adventures they'd have once the snow melted. She was being brave, Caleb knew, putting on a show of normalcy because she sensed the adults needed it. He'd raised one hell of a kid. As evening approached, Caleb made the last of the soup. It was barely warm by the time he served it, the camping stove running on fumes. After this, they'd be eating cold food straight from cans. Aurora ate mechanically, not tasting anything. Tomorrow, she said. You'll be able to dig out tomorrow? Should be able to. Snow's stopped, temperatures rising slightly. I can dig a path to the main road, walk down to the neighbor's place, call for help. How far is that? 12 miles. If the roads are clear enough, I can make it in 4 hours. Maybe 5. And you'll leave us here.
Onward she eats.
It wasn't a question. Caleb met her eyes. I'll leave Maya here. You'll keep each other warm until I get back with help. What if something happens to you? Nothing's going to happen to me. But what if it does? What if you fall or get lost? Or then you keep Maya safe until someone comes looking. Caleb said it flatly, brooking no argument. You keep her warm. You keep her fed. You keep her alive. Can you do that? What, eh? Aurora looked at Maya, who was watching them both with wide eyes. Yes, I can do that. Good. They finished eating in silence. Caleb added the last pieces of the broken chair to the fire and watched them burn. Tomorrow, he'd start breaking up the table if he had to. The chairs, whatever it took to keep them warm one more night. Just one more night, that was all they needed. The sun set early, plunging the cabin back into darkness. Caleb lit the kerosene lamp and they gathered around it like primitive humans around a fire, seeking light and warmth in equal measure. Maya yawned hugely. I'm tired again. That's okay. Sleep's good for you. Will you sleep too? Eventually. Promise? Caleb crossed his heart. Promise. They settled back onto the mattress, arranging themselves in the same configuration as the night before. Maya in the middle, Aurora and Caleb on either side, all three wrapped in every blanket and sleeping bag Caleb owned. The temperature was already dropping again, the brief warmth from the fire fading fast. But they had survived one night. They could survive another. Aurora's hand found his over Maya's sleeping form. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. Thank you, she whispered. For everything, for saving me, for not giving up. Caleb squeezed her hand once. Thank me when we're all out of here safe. I will. I promise. They held on to each other through the darkness. 3 survivors in a frozen cabin on a mountain that didn't care whether they lived or died. Outside, the wind had died down to almost nothing. The storm was over. Now, they just had to make it through one more night. The night passed slower than the one before. Caleb lay awake for hours, listening to Maya's soft breathing on one side and Aurora's uneven breaths on the other. Every time Aurora shivered, he pulled her closer. Every time Maya stirred, he checked to make sure she was still warm. By the time dawn broke, he felt like he'd aged 10 years. But they were alive. All 3 of them. The morning light revealed a transformed landscape. The sun was out properly now, bright and cold, turning the snow-covered mountain into something almost beautiful. Almost. If you ignored the fact that beauty up here could kill you just as easily as the storm had tried to. Caleb extracted himself from the pile of bodies and blankets, feeling every muscle protest. 3 nights on a thin mattress with 2 other people had left him stiff and sore. He pulled on his coat and boots and stepped outside to assess the situation. The snow came up to his thighs in some places, his waist in others. The path to the generator shed was completely buried. The road down the mountain was invisible under feet of fresh powder. But the sky was clear. The temperature was rising. It had to be at least 10 degrees warmer than yesterday. He could work with this. Caleb spent the next hour digging. First a path to the shed, then toward what he thought was the road. The snow was heavy and wet, the kind that made your back scream after 20 minutes of shoveling. But he kept going, driven by the knowledge that every shovelful brought them closer to safety. He was halfway to the road when he heard Maya calling from the cabin. "Daddy, come quick!" Caleb dropped the shovel and ran, or tried to. Running in waist-deep snow was more like drowning in slow motion. He made it back to the cabin in what felt like an hour, but was probably 2 minutes. "What's wrong?" Maya stood in the doorway, Mr. Rabbit clutched tight. "Aurora's really hot, like fever hot." Caleb pushed past his daughter and went to the mattress where Aurora lay curled on her side. He put his hand on her forehead and cursed. She was burning up, her skin dry and radiating heat. "Aurora, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened but didn't quite focus. "Cold, so cold." "You're not cold, you're burning up." Caleb pulled back the blankets and checked her feet. The left one was significantly more swollen than yesterday, angry red streaks running up from her toes toward her ankle. "Damn it, it's infected." Maya came to stand beside him. "Is she going to be okay?" "I don't know." "Don't say that. You always say yes." "I can't promise things I can't control, sweetheart." Caleb grabbed the first aid kit and dug through it. He had basic antibiotics, the kind you kept for emergencies, but they were expired by 2 years. Better than nothing, but not by much. Go get me cold water from the snow. Fill the biggest pot we have. Maya ran to obey. Caleb got Aurora sitting up enough to swallow the pills, washing them down with water from their dwindling supply. She was mumbling now, words that didn't quite make sense strung together in fever logic. Should have told him. Should have said something. But Father said no. Always no. Keep the secrets. Protect the family. But Daniel was good. He was good, and we killed him. Aurora, you're not making sense. None of it makes sense. 30 years of not making sense. Her eyes found his face, and for a moment they cleared. I'm sorry. Tell him I'm sorry. I'll tell him. But first you need to focus on getting better. Too late. Always too late. Maya returned with the pot of snow. Caleb set it near what was left of the fire to melt, then soaked a cloth in the cold water and pressed it to Aurora's forehead. She flinched away from it, but he held firm. This is going to feel bad, but it'll help. Your body's fighting an infection, and it's burning too hot. Let it burn. No. Why not? Be easier for everyone. Caleb grabbed her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me. You don't get to give up. Not now. Not after we survived everything else. You fight this. You understand me? Aurora stared at him with glassy eyes. Why do you care? But the question hit him harder than it should have. Why did he care? This was Aurora Steele, the enemy, the person whose family had destroyed his. He should be happy to watch her burn up with fever, should consider it karma finally catching up with her. But he wasn't, and he couldn't lie about why. Because my daughter would be devastated if you died, he said finally. And because you're trying to be better than you were. And because, he stopped, swallowed. Because you're not the person I thought you were. What person did you think I was? A monster, someone who destroyed people and didn't care. But you're not that. You're just someone who made terrible choices and has to live with them, like the rest of us. Aurora's hand found his wrist, her grip weak but present. Your brother, Daniel. I think about him every day. What he must have thought, how he must have hated us. He did hate you, all of you. It ate him alive. I'm sorry. I know, you've said it 100 times. Will I ever say it enough? Caleb pressed the cold cloth against her forehead again. Probably not, but you can try. The fever climbed throughout the morning despite his efforts. Caleb rotated cold compresses, forced water down her throat, administered the expired antibiotics on schedule. Nothing helped. Aurora's temperature kept rising, her mumbling turning to incoherent babbling, her body shaking with chills despite the heat radiating from her skin. Maya watched from across the room, hugging Mister. Rabbit so tight the stitching was probably coming loose. She's getting worse. Yes. Are you going to save her? I'm trying. Try harder. If only it were that simple. Caleb looked at his daughter's fierce expression and saw so much of himself reflected back. That stubborn refusal to accept defeat, that belief that trying hard enough could fix anything. He'd had that same belief once, before life taught him otherwise. I need to go get help, he said. Now, today. I can't wait anymore. But you said the roads. I'll make it work. I have to. Caleb stood up and started pulling on extra layers. 2 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of socks. Every piece of warm clothing he owned. You're going to stay here with Aurora. Keep her cool with the compresses. Make sure she drinks water. Can you do that? Maya nodded seriously. I can do that. If she stops breathing or if her fever gets worse, Caleb stopped. What was he supposed to tell a 6-year-old to do if Aurora died while he was gone? Just do your best, sweetheart. That's all anyone can ask. He gathered supplies. A backpack with water and the last of their food. The satellite phone that probably wouldn't work because the mountains blocked the signal. A flare gun in case he got lost. The rifle in case he didn't. Aurora grabbed his arm as he passed the mattress. Her eyes were clearer than they'd been in hours, like the fever had momentarily burned away the fog. Don't leave her alone. If I die, don't leave Maya alone with, you're not dying. But if I do, you're not. Caleb pulled his arm free. So stop talking about it and focus on staying alive until I get back. Bossy. You mentioned that before. Still true. Aurora's eyes drifted closed. Be careful. Mountain's dangerous. I've lived on this mountain for 7 years. I think I can handle it. Pride comes before... She stopped mid-sentence, unconsciousness pulling her under again. Caleb looked at Maya. Take care of her. I will. You take care of you. Always do. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Maya smiled anyway, because that's what brave kids did when their fathers left them behind to save someone's life. The journey down the mountain was brutal from the first step. The snow was so deep in places that Caleb had to crawl on top of it, distributing his weight to avoid breaking through. Other sections had been scoured clean by the wind, leaving patches of ice so slick he had to move on his hands and knees. He fell twice in the first mile. The second time, he slid 20 feet down an embankment before catching himself on a tree. His shoulder slammed into the trunk hard enough to make his vision white out for a few seconds. When it cleared, he was hanging over a drop he couldn't see the bottom of. Caleb pulled himself back onto solid ground and sat there for a minute, breathing hard. His shoulder throbbed. His hands were numb despite the gloves. And he'd barely made a dent in the 12 miles he needed to cover. He stood up and kept walking. The sun climbed higher, providing light but not warmth. The temperature had to be in the single digits, maybe lower, with the wind chill. Caleb's breath formed clouds that froze in his beard. His eyelashes kept trying to stick together. Every exposed bit of skin burned with cold, but he kept moving, because Maya was counting on him, because Aurora was dying, and he'd be damned if he was going to let that happen. Because he'd already lost too many people in his life, and he wasn't ready to add another name to that list. Mile 3. His legs were screaming, muscles burning from the effort of pushing through snow. He stopped to drink water and discovered the bottle had frozen solid. He tucked it inside his coat, hoping his body heat would melt it enough to drink. Mile 5. The road was more visible here, a slight depression in the snow where the elevation flattened out. Caleb followed it, using trees as guideposts. The satellite phone was useless, just like he'd expected. No signal up here, never had been. Mile 7. He fell again, this time into a drift that swallowed him up to his chest. It took 5 minutes of fighting to get out, and by the time he did, he'd lost one of his gloves. The cold on his bare hand was instant and vicious. Caleb shoved it in his pocket and kept going, knowing he'd probably lose some fingers to frostbite, but not caring because what good were fingers if everyone in that cabin died? Mile 9. The neighbor's cabin should be visible soon. Caleb scanned the tree line, looking for the smoke from their chimney. Nothing. The place looked abandoned, no lights in the windows, no tracks in the snow. They'd probably evacuated before the storm hit. Smart people always did. He was so tired. Every step felt like moving through concrete. His vision was starting to narrow at the edges, black creeping in from the sides. He knew those signs. Hypothermia. His body shutting down to conserve heat it didn't have. Just a little further. That's what he told himself. Just one more mile. Mile 10. Caleb collapsed in the snow and for a minute considered just staying there, lying down and letting the cold take him. It would be easy, peaceful, better than this endless struggle against a mountain that wanted him dead. Then he thought of Maya's face, that fierce expression she got when she was being brave, the way she'd looked at him and said, "Take care of you," like she already knew he wasn't going to. He stood up and kept walking. The neighbor's cabin appeared through the trees like a mirage. Caleb staggered toward it, fell up the porch steps, pounded on the door with his one good hand. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. He broke a window with his elbow and climbed through, glass cutting his coat in 3 places. The cabin was cold inside. The heat turned off, but it was shelter from the wind. Caleb found the phone on the wall and lifted the receiver. Dial tone. Beautiful, perfect dial tone. He called 911 with shaking fingers, and when the dispatcher answered, the words came out in a rush. Caleb Ward, stranded at my cabin 12 miles north of Marker Point Road. 2 others with me, 1 critical. 6-year-old girl and 30-year-old woman with infected frostbite and high fever. We need medical evacuation immediately. The dispatcher's voice was professional, calm. Can you give me your exact coordinates? Caleb rattled off the GPS coordinates he'd memorized years ago, back when he first moved to the mountain. The dispatcher repeated them back, confirmed them, asked him to stay on the line. I can't. I need to get back to them. My daughter's alone with... He stopped. Just send help. As fast as you can. Sir, search and rescue is mobilizing now. They'll be there within 3 hours. Can you make it back to your cabin? Caleb looked at the broken window, at the snow still falling lightly outside, at his frozen hand and his battered body. 3 hours to get help to the cabin. Another 2 or 3 for him to make it back if he didn't collapse on the way. I'll make it. Sir, if you're experiencing hypothermia symptoms, you should stay. He hung up. Staying here was the smart choice, the safe choice. But Maya was alone and Aurora was dying, and Caleb had never been good at making the smart choice when people he cared about needed him. He raided the neighbor's kitchen for supplies, found protein bars and bottled water, shoved them in his backpack, found a spare pair of gloves and put them on, found a first aid kit with actual non-expired antibiotics and took the whole thing. Then he climbed back out the broken window and started the long walk home. The return trip was worse than the journey down. Caleb was exhausted, hypothermic, running on nothing but stubbornness and fear. He fell more times than he could count, lost the other glove somewhere around mile 4, spent 20 minutes convinced he was walking in circles before finding a landmark he recognized. The sun was setting by the time he saw his cabin through the trees. Smoke was rising from the chimney. Maya must have figured out how to keep the fire going. Good girl, smart girl. Caleb staggered up to the door and pushed it open. The warmth inside hit him like a wall. He stumbled, caught himself on the doorframe, and looked up to see Maya's face streaked with tears. Daddy. She ran to him, and he caught her with his good arm, held her tight while his vision swam. I'm here. I'm okay. Did you take care of Aurora? I tried. I did everything you said, but she's so hot, and she won't wake up, and I didn't know what to do. You did perfect. Help's coming. Search and rescue. 3 hours, maybe less. Caleb set Maya down gently and moved to the mattress where Aurora lay unconscious. Her face was flushed red, her breathing shallow and fast. The infection had spread up her leg, angry red lines tracking toward her knee. He pulled out the neighbor's first aid kit and loaded her up with proper antibiotics, the kind that might actually work. Gave her water through a dropper since she couldn't swallow properly. Applied antibiotic ointment to her feet and wrapped them in clean bandages. Then he collapsed next to the mattress and let Maya crawl into his lap. You came back, she whispered. Of course I came back. I promised. I was scared you wouldn't. I know, sweetheart, but I don't break promises to you. Not ever. Caleb kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar smell of her shampoo. How long has Aurora been unconscious? Since lunch. She was talking weird stuff, and then she just stopped. Maya pulled back to look at his face. Is she gonna die? Not if I can help it. That's not a yes. It's the best answer I've got right now. Yeet. They sat in silence, listening to Aurora's labored breathing and the crackle of the fire. Caleb's hands were starting to thaw, the pain coming back in waves that made him grit his teeth. Frostbite for sure. He'd probably lose at least one finger, maybe 2. Small price to pay for getting help. The sound of helicopter rotors came 2 hours later, just as full dark was settling over the mountain. Caleb had never heard a more beautiful sound in his life. He carried Maya outside and watched the search and rescue helicopter circle, looking for a place to land. The snow was too deep, the terrain too rough. They'd have to lower a medic on a cable. The helicopter hovered overhead, downdraft creating a blizzard of loose snow. A figure descended on a cable, boots touching down 20 feet from the cabin. The medic disconnected and jogged over, medical bag in hand. Caleb Ward? That's me. Patient's inside. Infected frostbite, high fever, unconscious for the last 6 hours. The medic followed him into the cabin and went straight to Aurora. He checked her vitals, examined her feet, started an IV line with practiced efficiency. We need to get her out of here, now. That infection's spreading fast. Can you take all of us? Weight limits 2 passengers plus crew. I can take her and the child. No. Maya grabbed Caleb's hand. I'm not leaving without Daddy. The medic looked between them. Sir, I understand, but take Aurora first, Caleb said. Get her to a hospital. Come back for us. That could be another 3 hours. The weather's deteriorating again. Then you better hurry. The medic wanted to argue. Caleb could see it in his face. But there wasn't time for arguments. Aurora was dying, and Maya was safe as long as she stayed with Caleb. The choice was obvious. They strapped Aurora to a rescue litter and hooked her to the cable. Caleb watched her rise into the air, unconscious and broken, on her way to salvation or death. He couldn't tell which. The helicopter disappeared into the darkness, taking Aurora with it. Maya pressed close to Caleb's side. "They're coming back, right? They're coming back. Promise?" "Promise." So they went back inside, and Caleb added wood to the fire, actual wood this time, from the table he'd finally broken apart. The helicopter would return. He had to believe that. Had to trust that the medic's word was good, and they wouldn't be left up here. An hour passed, then 2. The temperature dropped again, the brief warmth from earlier in the day completely gone. Caleb held Maya close and told her stories about Sarah, about Daniel, about all the people who'd loved her before she was born. "Do you think Aurora will be okay?" Maya asked. "I don't know." "But you hope so." It wasn't a question. Caleb looked at his daughter's serious face and realized there was no point lying. "Yeah, I hope so." "Do you like her?" "That's complicated." "You keep saying that. What does it mean?" Caleb thought about Aurora collapsing on his doorstep, about holding her through the worst of the cold, about the way she'd played cards with Maya and told the truth about her family's crimes, and tried so hard to be better than what she'd been. "It means I hated who she was," he said slowly. "But I don't hate who she's trying to become." "That's not complicated. That's just change." Maya said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "People change. You taught me that." "I did?" "Yeah, you said Mom changed when she found out about me. Got softer. That's change. You're too smart for 6 years old." "I know." The helicopter returned 3 hours later, rotors announcing its arrival from a mile away. This time they lowered a basket and Caleb helped Maya into it, made sure she was strapped in safely. "See you on the ground, sweetheart." "Don't take too long." "I won't." Maya rose into the air and disappeared into the helicopter's belly. Then the basket came back down for Caleb. He climbed in, felt the cable go taut, and left the cabin behind. The flight to the hospital took 40 minutes. Caleb spent it staring out the window at the mountain that had tried to kill them all, thinking about survival and second chances and the strange ways life brought people together. The medic who'd taken Aurora earlier was waiting at the helipad. "She's stable. Critical, but stable. The antibiotics you gave her probably saved her life." "She's going to make it?" "Doctors think so. It'll be touch and go for a few days, but yeah, she should make it." Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Maya ran to him as soon as he stepped off the helicopter, and he picked her up and held her tight, feeling her solid weight against him. Real. Safe. Alive. "Aurora's okay," Maya said. "The doctors told me she's going to be okay." "Yeah, she is." "Can we see her?" "Not yet. She needs to rest. Get better. But soon." They were led inside through bright hallways that hurt Caleb's eyes after days of darkness and firelight. A doctor examined his hands, tisked over the frostbite, told him he'd probably keep all his fingers, but the recovery would be painful. Small price to pay. They admitted him overnight for observation, hypothermia treatment, fluids. Maya stayed with him, curled up in the hospital bed like she used to when she was smaller. She fell asleep against his chest, and Caleb lay awake, staring at the ceiling, processing everything that had happened. 3 days ago, Aurora Steele had been the enemy. A name he spat out like poison, a face that represented everything he'd lost. Now she was someone his daughter cared about, someone he'd risked his life to save, someone he'd told the truth to, that he didn't hate who she was trying to become. Caleb didn't know what that meant, didn't know where they went from here, but for the first time in 5 years, he felt something other than anger when he thought about the Steele family name. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something, and maybe that was enough. Aurora woke up 4 days later in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and failure. The first thing she saw was white ceiling tiles. The second was an IV line running into her arm. The third was Maya Ward, asleep in a chair next to her bed, with Mr. Rabbit clutched to her chest. "You're awake." Aurora turned her head slowly, every muscle protesting. Caleb sat in the other chair, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. His hands were bandaged, his face gaunt, but his eyes were clear and watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "How long?" Her voice came out as a croak. 4 days. You've been in and out, mostly out. Doctors said the infection nearly killed you. Caleb stood and poured water from a pitcher, held the cup while she drank. They had to do surgery, cut away some of the damaged tissue on your feet. You'll keep your toes, but it was close. Aurora looked down at her feet, wrapped in bandages so thick they looked like clubs. Can I walk? We're just some. Eventually, physical therapy, couple months of recovery, but yeah, you'll walk. Lucky me. You're alive. That's more than luck. She closed her eyes, processing. 4 days gone. 4 days while her body fought an infection that should have killed her. 4 days while Caleb and Maya had sat in this sterile room, waiting to see if she'd wake up or not. Why did you come back? She asked suddenly. What? That day. When you went for help. You could have stayed down the mountain, let search and rescue handle everything. But you came back. Why? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Because Maya was alone. And because I wasn't going to let you die without knowing that I heard what you said. About trying to be better. About being sorry. Does it matter that you heard? Yeah, it matters. It was. Aurora felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking. She was too tired for breaking. More like thawing, the way ice cracked when spring came to the mountain. Your hands. What happened? Frostbite. Lost the tips of 2 fingers on my left hand. Could have been worse. He held up the bandaged hand like it was evidence. Doctor says I can still shoot a rifle and hold my daughter. That's all I need. You lost fingers saving me. I lost fingers saving everyone. Don't make it about you specifically. But it was about me. If I hadn't shown up at your cabin, then something else would have happened. The storm would have hit anyway. We would have survived it anyway. You didn't cause the blizzard, Aurora. You were just there when it happened. Maya stirred in her chair, yawned hugely, and opened her eyes. When she saw Aurora awake, her face lit up like Christmas morning. You're awake. Daddy, she's awake. I see that, sweetheart. Maya scrambled onto the bed carefully, avoiding Aurora's feet. You were asleep for so long. The doctor said you were really sick, but you'd get better, and they were right. Are you feeling better? I'm feeling like I got hit by a truck, but better than dead, I guess. That's good. Better than dead is good. Maya settled in next to Aurora like they'd been friends for years instead of 3 desperate days. Daddy told me about the surgery. He said you were very brave. Aurora looked at Caleb, who shrugged. You were. Unconscious, but brave. I don't think that counts. Counts to me. A nurse came in then, bustling and efficient, checking Aurora's vitals and adjusting her IV. She asked questions Aurora answered on autopilot, submitted to being poked and prodded, waited for the woman to finish and leave before speaking again. What happens now? She asked Caleb. Now you heal. Get strong enough to leave the hospital. After that, he paused. After that is up to you. My family. Do they know I'm here? The hospital called your emergency contact. Some assistant named Jennifer. She notified your father. He called yesterday, wanted to speak to the doctors. Caleb's expression was carefully neutral. I told them you weren't taking calls. You what? You were unconscious, and based on what you told me about why you left, I figured you didn't want them showing up here trying to drag you back to your old life before you'd even woken up. Aurora stared at him. No one had ever protected her from her own family before. The concept was so foreign, she didn't know how to process it. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Maya. She's the one who said you looked peaceful and probably needed more peace before dealing with your dad. Maya nodded seriously. You did look peaceful, like you were finally resting after being tired for a really long time. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds, Aurora felt tears prickling at her eyes and blinked them back. She didn't cry. Hadn't cried in years, since the night after Daniel Ward's funeral when she'd locked herself in her bathroom and sobbed until she threw up. But now, lying in this hospital bed with a child curled up next to her and a man she'd wronged watching over her like she mattered, the tears came anyway. Hey. Caleb's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. You're okay. You're safe. I don't deserve this. Your kindness, after everything, maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. He reached out and awkwardly patted her shoulder with his unbandaged hand. Just accept it and move on. Maya hugged Aurora carefully, mindful of the IV line. It's okay to cry. Daddy says crying is just feelings leaking out because there's too many to keep inside. Your daddy's very wise. I know, he's the best. Caleb's face went slightly red, but he didn't argue, just sat back down in his chair and let his daughter comfort a woman who'd once been the enemy. The days that followed fell into a strange routine. Caleb and Maya came every morning, stayed until visiting hours ended at 8. Maya would draw pictures or tell stories or read to Aurora from books she'd brought from home. Caleb would sit quietly, sometimes reading the newspaper, sometimes just watching them both with that unreadable expression. Aurora's father called 6 more times. She ignored all of them. Her assistant Jennifer called twice, desperate and worried. Aurora finally took that call, if only to tell Jennifer she was alive and recovering and would be in touch when she was ready. Not before. The Steel Corporation released a statement saying their CEO was taking a medical leave of absence. The stock price dipped 3%. Aurora found she didn't care. Physical therapy started on day 7. A cheerful sadist named Marcus, who made her work her feet until she wanted to scream. But slowly, painfully, she started to regain mobility. First just wiggling her toes, then flexing her ankles, then finally putting weight on her feet while holding parallel bars. Caleb was there for the first time she walked. 5 steps, each one agony, but 5 steps nonetheless. When she collapsed back into the wheelchair, sweating and shaking, he was the one who handed her water and told her she'd done good. I walked 5 steps. That's not exactly a marathon. No, but it's 5 more than yesterday. That's progress. When did you become an optimist? I'm not. I'm a realist who's seen enough people give up to recognize when someone's fighting. You're fighting. That matters. On day 10, the doctors cleared Aurora to leave the hospital. On day 10, she could walk short distances with a cane, could manage stairs if she was careful. Her feet would hurt for months, maybe years, but she'd keep them. She'd heal. The question was where she'd go to do that healing. Caleb brought it up on her last evening in the hospital. Maya had fallen asleep in the chair, worn out from a day of running around the hospital corridors, and it was just the 2 of them awake in the dim room. You have a plan? He asked. For what? For after you leave here, where you're going, what you're doing. Eat what? Aurora looked at her bandaged feet. I've been thinking about that. I could go back to Seattle, back to my apartment and my job and my life. Pretend the last month never happened. But I don't want to. That life wasn't making me happy. It was just making me successful, which isn't the same thing. She met his eyes. I could also go somewhere new, start over completely. New city, new name, new everything. Run away. Maybe, or maybe just start fresh. Caleb was quiet for a moment. There's a third option. What's that? Stay here, in this area. Find a place nearby. Figure out who you want to be without running away from everything you were. Aurora felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. Why would I do that? Because running away means you're still letting your past control you, just in a different direction. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You want to be better than you were? Then be better, right here, where people knew who you were and can see you change. People here hate me. The Steel name means nothing to most people on this mountain. And the ones who care will get over it or they won't. Either way, it's not your problem. He paused. Maya likes you. Asked me this morning if you'd come visit once you were better. I told her I didn't know. What would you tell her if I said yes? I'd tell her to clean the guest room. Aurora stared at him. You're offering to let me stay? With you? Not with me. Near me. There's a cabin about 3 miles down from mine. Owner died last year. Place has been sitting empty. It's small and it needs work, but it's got good bones. You could rent it. Fix it up. Have a place to recover while you figure out what comes next. Why would you do that? After everything? Because Maya would be heartbroken if you disappeared and we never saw you again. And because Caleb stopped, choosing his words carefully. Because I spent 5 years hating you for something you couldn't change. And I'm tired of hating. It's exhausting and it doesn't fix anything. So I'm choosing something different. Well, what are you choosing? To see what happens if I let go of the anger and the bitterness and the need to make someone pay for what was taken from me. He looked at her directly. I can't forgive your family. Probably can't ever forgive you completely. But I can stop letting it poison everything. And maybe that's enough. Aurora felt the tears coming again. I don't know what to say. Say yes or say no. Anything else is just noise. She thought about Seattle, about her corner office and her empty apartment and her calendar full of meetings that meant nothing. She thought about starting over somewhere new, hiding from her past by pretending it never existed. She thought about Caleb's offer, a small cabin on a mountain, near a man who'd every right to hate her, and a child who'd somehow decided she was worth caring about. Yes, she said quietly, I'll stay. Caleb nodded like he'd expected that answer, but Aurora saw the relief flash across his face before he hit it. Good. Maya will be excited. What about you? What about me? Are you excited? Or just resigned to having me nearby? Caleb stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. I don't know what I am. This whole situation it's not something I ever expected to be dealing with. The woman whose family destroyed mine, living 3 miles down the mountain. My daughter getting attached to her. Me having to relearn how to exist without anger as my default setting. He turned back to face her. But excited? Maybe. A little. In a terrified this could go horribly wrong kind of way. That's honest. It's all I've got. Aurora left the hospital the next morning in a wheelchair she didn't need, but the nurses insisted on. Caleb had brought his truck around, helped her into the passenger seat while Maya bounced in the back, talking a mile a minute about all the things they'd show Aurora once she was settled. The drive up the mountain was familiar and strange at the same time. Aurora recognized the curves where she'd lost control of her car 3 weeks ago. Saw the place where Caleb must have dug through feet of snow to get down for help. Past his cabin, smoke rising from the chimney, looking warm and solid against the winter landscape. The cabin Caleb had mentioned was another 10 minutes up a narrow road. It was small, like he'd said, maybe half the size of his place. The roof sagged slightly on one side and the paint was peeling, but the foundation looked solid and the windows were intact. It's perfect, Aurora said. Maya looked skeptical. It's kind of broken. Everything worth having is a little broken. You just fix it. They spent the afternoon making the place livable. Caleb checked the water and power, got both working. Maya swept out months of accumulated dust and debris. Aurora sat in a chair that had seen better days and directed traffic, unable to help much but unwilling to just watch. By evening, the cabin had heat and running water and enough furniture scrounged from Caleb's storage to be functional. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Caleb made them all dinner on the camping stove, soup again, because apparently that was his signature dish. They ate sitting on the floor because there wasn't a table yet, passing the pot around and eating straight from it with mismatched spoons. This is nice, Maya said through a mouthful of soup. Like a picnic, but inside, in winter. That's exactly what it is. Aurora agreed. After dinner, Caleb put Maya in the truck to drive her home. Before he left, he turned to Aurora. You need anything, you call. Number's on the fridge. I'm 3 miles away. 10 minutes in good weather, 20 in bad. I'll be fine. I know, but the offer stands. He paused at the door. Welcome to the mountain. Try not to almost die this time. I'll do my best. The door closed behind them, and Aurora was alone for the first time in weeks. She sat in the silence, listening to the wind outside and the creak of the cabin settling, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. The weeks that followed were hard in ways Aurora hadn't anticipated. Physical therapy was brutal, pushing her body past limits she didn't know she had. The mountain in winter was isolating, especially for someone used to constant noise and activity. And being alone with her thoughts, without work to distract her, meant confronting things she'd been running from for 15 years. But Maya came by almost every day after school, bursting with stories and energy and a complete lack of judgment about Aurora's past. And Caleb came by too, ostensibly to check on repairs or bring supplies, but really just to make sure she was okay. They didn't talk about the past much. didn't rehash the lawsuit or Daniel or the years of bitterness. Instead, they talked about practical things: how to winterize pipes, the best way to split firewood, whether the roof would make it through another heavy snow, or if it needed replacing before spring. One evening in late February, Caleb stayed for dinner. Aurora had been practicing cooking on the ancient stove, producing meals that ranged from barely edible to surprisingly decent. Tonight was somewhere in the middle: chicken that was slightly dry and vegetables that were slightly mushy, but all of it hot and filling. "This is good," Caleb said, which meant it was passable. Liar, but thank you. Maya had gone home with a friend from school, leaving the two adults alone. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Aurora spoke. "I called my father yesterday." Caleb looked up. "How'd that go?" "About as well as expected. He demanded I come back immediately, said I was embarrassing the family and destroying the company with my absence. When I said no, he threatened to cut me off financially. And I told him to do it. Cut me off, fire me, remove me from the will, whatever he needed to do to feel like he was in control." Aurora set down her fork. "I don't need his money, Aurora. I've got enough saved to live on for years if I'm careful. And I definitely don't need his approval." "That must have been hard." It was liberating. Scary as hell, but liberating." She met Caleb's eyes. "I spent 30 years trying to earn his respect, trying to prove I was worthy of the family name. And yesterday I realized I don't care anymore. He's a man who built an empire on stolen work and destroyed anyone who got in his way. Why would I want his respect? Because he's your father. That's biology, not a relationship." Aurora pushed food around her plate. "I'm done trying to fix things with him, done trying to make him see what he did was wrong. He'll never admit it, and I'm tired of waiting for something that's never going to happen." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, I think that's the right call. Some people don't want to change. Holding out hope that they will just hurts you. Is that what you did? With me?" "What do you mean?" "You held on to anger for 5 years, nursed it, let it define how you saw the world, and then you let it go. Why?" Caleb thought about it. "Because I looked at you half frozen on my doorstep and realized you weren't the villain I'd built up in my head. You were just a person who'd made bad choices and was trying to do better. And I figured if you could try to change, I could try to let go." "That simple?" "That complicated, but yeah, basically." He stood and started clearing dishes. "People aren't one thing. They're not all good or all bad. They're just people making choices, trying to survive. You made bad choices, but you're making better ones now. That counts for something." Besides Saho. Ying. Aurora helped clean up, working around her still healing feet. When the dishes were done, they stood at the window looking out at the mountain in the fading light. "I've been thinking about what to do next," Aurora said. "Long term. I can't just hide up here forever." "Why not?" "Because that's running away. You said it yourself, I need to be better where people can see me change." "So what are you thinking?" "Ishii distie beskiing. There's a technology incubator in the valley. They fund startups, help new companies get off the ground. I called them last week, asked if they needed volunteers with corporate experience." She smiled slightly. "Turns out they do. I start next month, part-time, helping young entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes I made." "That sounds good. Meaningful." "It feels right, using what I know to help people build things the right way instead of the way my father did it." Aurora turned to face him. "And I've been thinking about Daniel, your brother, about doing something to honor his memory properly." Caleb went very still. "What do you mean?" "There's a scholarship fund in his name, but it's small, underfunded. I want to change that, create something substantial, something that would actually make a difference for students studying engineering and innovation. Would that—" She hesitated. "Would that be okay? Or would it feel like I'm trying to buy forgiveness?" "It depends on why you're doing it." "Because your brother deserved better than what he got. Because his work should be remembered for what it actually was, not what my father's lawyers made it out to be. Because I can't fix what happened, but I can maybe make sure other innovators don't get crushed the way he was." Caleb was quiet for a long time. Aurora watched emotions cross his face, pain, anger, something that might have been grief or might have been hope. He would have liked that, Caleb said finally. Daniel always believed in lifting other people up, helping them succeed. A scholarship in his name that actually helps people? Yeah, he would have been honored. Then I'll do it. Set it up properly. Make sure it lasts. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's the least I can do. Spring came to the mountain slowly, snow melting in patches, revealing ground that hadn't seen sun in months. Aurora's feet healed enough that she could walk without a cane, though they still ached in cold weather and probably always would. She started working at the incubator 2 days a week, found she actually enjoyed helping young founders navigate the business world without compromising their ethics. Maya turned 7 in April. Aurora baked her a cake that only slightly resembled the picture in the cookbook, and Caleb didn't comment on the lopsided layers or the frosting that had melted in weird patterns. They ate it anyway, all 3 of them, sitting on Aurora's porch watching the sunset. Make a wish, Aurora told Maya as she blew out the candles. I wish we could do this every year, the 3 of us, together, beat. Caleb and Aurora exchanged a look over Maya's head. Neither of them said anything, but they didn't need to. In May, Aurora went back to Seattle for the first time since leaving. Not to her old apartment or her old office. Instead, she went to the cemetery where Daniel Ward was buried. She stood at his grave for an hour telling him everything, about the storm and the cabin and his brother, about trying to be better, about the scholarship fund that now bore his name and would help dozens of students every year. I'm sorry, she said to the headstone. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry anyway, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what my family did to you. Not because I expect forgiveness, just because it's the right thing to do. The stone didn't answer. But somehow, standing there in the quiet cemetery, Aurora felt lighter than she had in years. By summer, Aurora's cabin had been transformed. She'd fixed the roof, painted the exterior, planted a small garden that would probably die because she had no idea what she was doing. Caleb helped with the heavy lifting, teaching her things his brother had taught him about carpentry and construction and making things last. They weren't friends exactly, too much history for that simple word, but they were something. People who'd survived hell together and come out the other side changed, but not broken. One evening in July, sitting on Aurora's porch watching fireflies, Caleb spoke into the comfortable silence. You were right, about running away versus starting over. How so? I ran away after Daniel died. Came up here, isolated myself, convinced myself I was protecting Maya, when really I was just hiding from everything that hurt. But you came back, faced your past, tried to fix what you could. He looked at her. That takes more courage than running. I don't feel courageous. I feel like I'm making it up as I go along. That's what courage is. Showing up even when you don't know what you're doing. Aurora smiled. When did you become a philosopher? Itposo sayokas. I've always been one. You were just too busy almost dying to notice. They sat in silence a while longer. Maya was asleep inside, worn out from a day of exploring the mountain. The night was warm and full of sounds, crickets and nightbirds and the wind through the trees. I don't regret it, Aurora said suddenly. Driving up here that night, nearly dying, all of it. You should. It was stupid and reckless. Maybe, but it brought me here, to this mountain, to you and Maya, to a life that actually means something instead of just looking good on paper. She turned to face him. I was dying before I ever got to your cabin. Just slower, more socially acceptable. The storm just made it obvious. And now I'm living. Actually living. For the first time in my life, I'm making choices because they're right for me, not because they're what someone else expects. That's worth almost freezing to death. Caleb shook his head, but he was smiling. You're insane. Probably, but I'm happy. That's new. Boy. Summer turned to fall. Aurora celebrated her 31st birthday with Caleb and Maya, blowing out candles on a cake Maya had helped bake. The scholarship fund in Daniel's name awarded its first grants to 5 engineering students. Aurora's work at the incubator expanded to 3 days a week. She sold her apartment in Seattle without ever going back to it. Had everything shipped to the mountain or donated to charity. Bought the cabin she'd been renting, made it officially hers. In October, Maya asked the question Aurora had been expecting for months. Are you going to stay forever on the mountain? They were making soup together. Aurora had finally mastered Caleb's recipe, or at least a version of it. Maya was chopping vegetables with the careful concentration of a 7-year-old handling a knife. I don't know about forever, but for a long time, yeah. Good. I like having you nearby. I like being nearby. Do you think you and Daddy will ever... Maya paused, thinking. You know, be together? Aurora nearly dropped the spoon she was holding. What makes you ask that? He smiles more when you're around, and you look at him like he's important. That's what people do when they like each other. It's complicated, sweetheart. Everyone says that, but it's not. You either like someone or you don't. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Aurora chose her words carefully. Your dad and I have a difficult history. Things happened before you were born that hurt him very badly. And even though we're friends now, that history doesn't just go away. But you're trying to fix it. Yes, I'm trying. Then it'll be okay. Trying is what matters. Maya said it with the absolute certainty of a child who still believed effort was enough to solve anything. Aurora hoped she was right. The first snow came in November, soft flakes that reminded Aurora of the storm without triggering the panic she'd been afraid would come. She stood on her porch watching it fall, thinking about how far she'd come in a year. A year ago, she'd been CEO of a corporation she didn't care about, living a life that was killing her slowly. Now she was a volunteer mentor, a mountain resident, a woman learning to build things with her hands and live with her choices. Now she was someone who mattered to a 7-year-old girl and didn't hate herself when she looked in the mirror. That was worth everything she'd given up, everything she'd lost, everything she'd nearly died to find. Caleb appeared through the falling snow, Maya bundled beside him. They'd brought hot chocolate and cookies, claimed they were just being neighborly. Aurora let them in, knowing it was more than that, but not ready to name what it was. They sat by her fire drinking cocoa while Maya chattered about school and Mr. Rabbit's latest adventures. Caleb listened with half his attention on his daughter and half on Aurora, and Aurora pretended not to notice the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. Later, after Maya had fallen asleep on the couch and Caleb had carried her to the truck, he lingered at the door. Thank you, he said, for staying, for trying, for being someone Maya can look up to. Thank you for letting me, for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Maybe you did deserve it, just took me a while to see that. They stood there in the doorway, snow falling behind Caleb, fire crackling behind Aurora. The space between them felt heavy, with things unsaid, questions unasked, possibilities neither was quite ready to voice. Good night, Aurora. Good night, Caleb. He left, and Aurora closed the door, and stood there thinking about forgiveness and second chances, and the strange ways broken people found their way toward healing. Winter settled over the mountain, cold but not cruel. Aurora had everything she needed, firewood and food, a cabin that held heat, friends who checked on her. She volunteered at the incubator, worked on scholarship applications, learned to cook meals that were actually edible. She called her assistant Jennifer, who'd left the steel corporation and started her own consulting business. They talked for 2 hours, and by the end of it, they'd made plans for Jennifer to visit in the spring. She didn't call her father. Probably never would again. Some relationships weren't worth saving, and she'd made peace with that. On a clear night in December, almost exactly a year after the storm, Caleb knocked on her door after Maya had gone to bed. He rarely came by this late, and Aurora's heart did something complicated when she saw him on her porch. Is everything okay? Yeah, He stopped, started again. Can we talk? Of course, come in. They sat by the fire, mugs of tea warming their hands. Caleb seemed nervous, which was unlike him. Aurora waited, giving him space to find whatever words he was looking for. A year ago, he started, you showed up at my cabin half frozen and I hated you, hated what you represented, hated that I had to save you, hated that Maya immediately liked you. Aurora's chest tightened. I know. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because I need you to understand how much has changed. Caleb set down his tea and looked at her directly. I don't hate you anymore. Haven't for months, and that terrifies me. Why? Because hating you was simple, safe. It meant I didn't have to examine anything or risk anything or figure out what it means that my daughter adores you, and He stopped. You what? Caleb ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. I don't know. Care about you. Value you. Look forward to seeing you. All of the above. I haven't let myself feel anything like this since Sarah died. And even that was different. Easier because we were kids and didn't know any better. Aurora felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Caleb, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to make this more complicated than it already is. I just needed you to know that you're not the only one who's changed this year. You're not the only one who's learning to be different. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's friendship or something else, or just shared trauma that'll fade once enough time passes. But I want to find out, if you do. Aurora thought about the past year, about Caleb teaching her to split wood and fix her roof and make soup that didn't taste like dishwater, about the way he listened when she talked about her struggles with her family, offered perspective without judgment, about Maya's question, do you and Daddy like each other, and her own inability to answer honestly. I do, she said quietly. Want to find out, I mean. But Caleb, my history with your family is history. It doesn't define our future unless we let it. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm not even saying it'll work. But I'm tired of letting the past control everything. Tired of holding on to anger that doesn't serve me. And I hope, that maybe we could build something new. Something that's ours instead of something inherited from people who aren't even here anymore. Aurora looked down at their joined hands, his bandaged fingers intertwined with hers. Your brother would want me to be happy, would want you to be better. And I think we can do both of those things without betraying his memory. Are you sure? No, but I'm willing to try if you are. Aurora squeezed his hand, felt him squeeze back. Then let's try. They didn't rush it, didn't jump into anything. Instead, they took it slow, figuring out what it meant to move from complicated friendship towards something that might eventually become more. Caleb started staying for dinner more often. Aurora started joining him and Maya for weekend hikes when her feet could handle it. They talked about everything, their fears, their hopes, their damage, and how they were trying to heal from it. Maya noticed, of course. Noticed and approved with the straightforward acceptance of a child who just wanted the adults in her life to be happy. I told you trying matters, she said one afternoon, smug with 7-year-old wisdom. Spring came again, the mountain shedding its snow like old skin. Aurora's second year on the mountain was easier than the first. She knew the rhythms now, knew how to survive the isolation and the cold. Knew that survival wasn't the same as living and that she was finally doing both. The scholarship fund in Daniel's name grew, helping more students. Aurora's work at the incubator expanded into a paid position. She bought a truck, so she didn't have to borrow Caleb's anymore, learned to drive mountain roads in all weather. She became part of the community, the woman who'd survived the storm, who'd given up a CEO position to live in a cabin and help startups. People knew her story, or parts of it. Some judged. Most didn't care. Everyone agreed she made decent soup now, which on the mountain was the highest compliment available. And slowly, carefully, she and Caleb built something that belonged to them. Not to their families or their histories or the ghosts of people who'd hurt each other years ago, just to them. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes, old hurt surfacing when they were tired or stressed. Aurora had moments when she felt like she didn't deserve Caleb's trust, and Caleb had moments when he wondered if he was betraying his brother by caring for someone with the Steele name. But they worked through it, talked it out, chose each other and the possibility of something good over the certainty of staying safe and alone. On a warm day in June, 2 years after the storm, they took Maya to the place where Aurora's car had gone off the road. The wreckage had been cleared months ago, but the scar in the trees remained. This is where it started, Aurora said. Maya looked around. Where what started? Everything. Me finding my way here, us becoming whatever we are. A family, Maya said firmly. We're a family. Caleb and Aurora looked at each other over Maya's head. Neither confirmed nor denied it, but neither argued either. They walked back to the truck together, 3 people who'd found each other in a storm and decided to stay found. That night, sitting on Aurora's porch with Caleb beside her and Maya asleep inside, Aurora thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. That brittle, empty person who'd walked out of a board meeting and kept walking until she couldn't anymore. That woman was gone, dead in the snow outside Caleb's cabin, and Aurora didn't mourn her. In her place was someone softer and stronger at the same time. Someone who'd learned that redemption wasn't something you earned through grand gestures, but through small daily choices to be better. Someone who'd discovered that home wasn't a place or a job or a family name, but the people who saw your worst and chose to stay anyway. Someone who'd nearly frozen to death and come back to life in ways that had nothing to do with body temperature. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked. "Second chances. How rare they are. How lucky I am to have gotten one." "You made your own luck, showed up, did the work, changed. We both changed." "Yeah, we did." Caleb put his arm around her shoulders, pulled her close. "Still changing, actually. Still figuring this out. Is that okay?" It's better than okay. It's real. And I'll take real over perfect any day." Aurora leaned into him, solid and warm and present. Real. "Me too." The mountain stretched out before them in the fading light, beautiful and dangerous and home. Somewhere down in the valley, Aurora's old life continued without her. The steel corporation running under new leadership, her father moving pieces on a board she no longer cared about. And up here, on a porch she'd built with her own hands and money she'd earned helping other people build their dreams. Aurora Ward. She'd started using her middle name professionally, distancing herself from her father's legacy, sat with the man she'd wronged, and the daughter who'd taught her what forgiveness actually looked like. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't what anyone would have predicted for a billionaire CEO from Seattle, but it was hers, earned through near death and hard choices and the daily work of becoming someone she didn't hate. And when Maya woke up and came outside, climbing into Aurora's lap like it was the most natural thing in the world, Aurora felt something she'd spent 30 years searching for without knowing what it was. She felt like she belonged, not because of money or status or family name, but because she'd chosen this place and these people, and they'd chosen her back. Because she'd stopped running from who she was and started building who she wanted to become. Because sometimes the things that nearly destroy us are actually saving us from destroying ourselves. The storm had brought her here, but the choice to stay, to change, to try, that had been all hers. And sitting there on her porch with Caleb's arm around her and Maya warm in her lap, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dark, Aurora understood something fundamental about the human condition. We're all just people, trying to survive our choices. Some of us make terrible ones. Some of us spend years living with the consequences. But the beautiful, terrifying truth is that we can change. We can become better than we were. Not perfect, never perfect, but better, kinder, more honest, more whole. It just takes work and courage, and people willing to believe we're capable of change even when we're not sure ourselves. The storm had passed. The mountain had tested them, and they'd survived, all three of them, by holding on to each other through the freezing dark. Now they were building something in the light, something imperfect and real and worth every painful step it took to get here. And that, Aurora thought, was the whole point. Not the destination, the journey, the daily choice to show up and try and be better than yesterday. The rest was just details.